Our coverage of the 2025 Anchorage municipal election. I'm joined here in studio by Assembly Member Chris Constant and Chair of the Assembly, right?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Chris.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Looking forward to having some conversations about the regular election 2025.
And we're joined by former Anchorage Assembly Member Kevin Cross from Chugiak Eagle River. How you doing?
I'm doing magnificently. Thank you, Jeff. Happy to be here.
Kind of off leash now. So.
I am. That's right. We don't know what's going to happen. I'm not tethered.
Off leash and unplugged.
Well, I want to thank you, Chris and Kevin, for joining us. We're going to have candidates in studio. We're going to be talking about the results. There's 6 assembly races. 2 incumbents are seeking re-election, which means there's going to be at least 4 new assembly members. There's 2 school board races, which maybe aren't as kind of hot as a few of the assembly races. And there's a bunch of bond propositions. So I guess I want to thank our sponsors. First of all, we have GCI. This internet, it's so fast, it's kind of scary. I mean, it's actually, Kevin was earlier telling me how fast his computer was acting weird.
I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was using
looking something up.
I thought I was using a Tesla phone.
Give me the information. And obviously we have lobbyists, Ashley Reed, Ted Popley, and Frank Bickford. So, some 3 lobbyists that have been around for a long time. If you're looking for a lobbyist and you need a lobbyist, call one of those guys. You guys have somebody else. You guys have Wendy. Wendy and Heather did sponsor our debates.
Yes.
Legislative consultants.
Legislative consultants.
So, I love the lobbyists, most of them. A few I don't care for, but for the most part, we love the lobbyists. I want to start by kind of talking about, we were talking before we started, this race felt to me like a little low energy. We could talk about some of the fundraising, not as much as we saw when Bronson was mayor, and maybe they were trying to defend the assembly. But, I'm in Juneau, but I come back and forth, and not a lot of signs. I got like 1 mailer. It just, to me, feels like not the assembly races we've seen in the past, where a lot of money, a lot of radio, mail, signs. You know what I'm saying? Do you kind of feel that?
Yeah, so I think that there is some truth to the impression that it was a sleeper election. It kind of crept up on people. There weren't a lot of candidates who got in the race early, and so most of these races are 90 days to 120 days, which is not a lot of time when you think about organizing and running a campaign. And I drove my district, which really spans from like Spenard in Minnesota to Turpin Road, just this week to see, and there isn't signage across the district. It feels like pretty much what I would call a status quo election, like just kind of standard fare. But I will tell you one thing that's quite impressive about this year's election. I have some numbers for you. This year so far, we've had 47,778 ballots cross the sorting machine. There were more ballots that came in today that didn't cross the sorter yet. And there are already, I believe, 39,142 ballots that have been adjudicated and ready to be heard. Now, compared to the last, since we started the vote by mail process, this is the 2nd highest participation rate, except for 2020.
The vote by mail started, I think, in 2018. Was that kind of the pilot?
Yep.
So just so the folks who are watching know, if they haven't been familiar with the results or if they're new, we're just going to have one dump tonight, right? We're going to have ballots, and in the past it's usually been ballots received and adjudicated up to 2 or 3 days before today. Is that right? And
I believe that they actually got through most of them that came in today, but for a second batch.
So around 8:30, 9, we're going to get a flash of the results.
Probably 2/3 of all the ballots that we cast in the whole election.
Now, Kevin, did you vote? Did you vote?
Yeah, I voted in person.
Okay, so I was going to say,
I feel pride showing my ID.
You didn't get the ballot and do it right away? Because
I didn't get mine. Mine didn't come in the mail. My wife got hers in the mail.
Really?
I think mine never came. I didn't know where to go. I was like, they were like, that guy. But no, I went and voted in person, which is really easy in Eagle River at the local library.
So
Besides, you get to meet the fantastic people that volunteer and sacrifice their day to sit in a sunless cubicle, for 9 hours a day or however long it is. I just feel sorry for them.
Well,
I should have brought praise.
You know what I feel sorry for is the state election workers during the November election with the early voting, when people were waiting in line for 2 or 3 hours.
But I want to build off what you said about it being kind of a quiet election. I don't think that it would normally be, other than the national news has dominated so much of the mainstream media that we're lucky to get a word in edgewise regarding local elections. I mean, every day there's something with Elon and Trump, and it's just like, and I don't know about you, but I'm just loving it. So I'm just scrolling through like crazy, like what kind of crazy shit's gonna happen today?
It's nonstop.
So nonstop. And I think that unfortunately deflects and takes away from local elections, which actually are where it really matters.
Well, one thing I did the assembly debates a few weeks ago, and I asked everybody about, it feels like not as exciting and not as vibrant as it was in the past. And I think a lot of people felt that the November election was a lot.
Right.
We had the Trump, we had the presidential, we had the legislature, the 40 House seats, the 20 Senate seats. We had the Peltola Beg. So we had a lot going on.
Right.
And people might have just, people are filing for assembly around that point.
Exactly.
But the public so maybe, burned out. So I think that might be a factor. Also, I think another factor is now LaFrance is mayor, and she aligns with, I'd say, the progressive bloc way more than Bronson. And when Bronson was mayor, I think it was more about, hey, we can't lose any of these seats. Is that?
Yeah, and I think the myth of the supermajority is.
How's Chris's mic? I see it kind of fell a little bit. Is Chris's mic okay?
Sorry, guys, we're live.
I went inside your.
Yeah, I think that the progressive majority is really a myth. The divide on the assembly is no longer conservative, liberal, progressive. It's really pro-housing or says they're pro-housing. That's what the divide really comes down to a lot of the times. And so it's a different dynamic than we had a few years ago.
I want to talk about District 1 in that kind of regard, but first I want to go to Kevin. You signed on to an ordinance with Meg Zolotel and Daniel Volan for zoning, and the funny thing was the conservatives came after you.
Well,
more so than
Anchorage's conservatives are Wasilla's liberals, and I'll say that right out. Like, we have it's different blend in Anchorage, and so I've always been very strong for private property rights. Like, private property rights are the foundation of this country. It's what our Constitution was based on, and if you're not free to express yourself or do what you want on your own property, are you really free? Okay, so I might be too conservative for even Eagle River. Maybe I should be living in Wasilla. But you're right in that when I signed up, it wasn't signing up with anybody. It was like, we need to be having an intentional conversation if we have not unintentionally overregulated ourselves into stagnation. I mean, you don't just wake up and realize that you're not building houses and you're 10,000 houses short. That doesn't happen overnight. Success and failure both happen gradually and then suddenly. And suddenly you're like, what the hell happened? Well, can we go back and look at the last 15 years? But if you're not willing to have those conversations, it makes it very difficult.
Well, I just did a podcast with the mayor yesterday. I just posted it, and I asked her about her 10,000 homes in 10 years, and which sounds great. I'm all for that. But last year it was 250. So you have to do 4 times that many per year. Mm-hmm. When, you've seen on the assembly, the Holton Hills folks show up, the Girdwood, they're very, they mislead the community councils. You have any kind of zoning change, which is going to do mixed use.
But first, there's been some misinformation already at this table, and I have to correct the record.
For me?
There is no way you are more conservative than folks in Wasilla. You contain multitudes because it depends on how you look at you, on where you fall on the spectrum or continuum of political perspectives, because there are some ways you're very progressive, some ways you're very conservative, and some ways you're very libertarian. And so I just have to correct the record there.
I'm a platypus.
Yes.
I love that.
Thank you.
Political platypus.
I got a bill and teeth, though. You got to look out.
But yes, the reality is every time you try to do anything, you're facing massive waves of opposition. There was one development that was proposed by Holtquist Homes, and it was 50 units, and they wanted 55 because it really would make the thing pencil. The neighbors up on Hillside fought that like it was the end of the world. There was a representative who used to serve there, who came at us and said, we've been fighting to protect this quality of life since 1974. Like, no wonder things are broken. We're doing what they set out to do 50 years ago without any thought for what the future is.
Well, if we're going to attract people here, we have to have housing.
Agreed.
And we have
and so what I discovered is that even in Chugach Eagle River, we have a comprehensive land plan. And then I discovered that that a lot of the community councils were intentionally doing things to oppose it. I mean, there were supposed to be utilities up the Old Glen Highway, and yet they've come out and saying we don't want that because we don't want smaller lots, or there's supposed to be public transportation. We don't want that because we don't want social service. We don't want that. So at one point, it gets very difficult because not coming from politics, but just being a guy who's running a business who reads the comp plan and says, here's what it says we're supposed to do. I thought all our neighbors were on board. I don't attend other community councils, maybe attend the one in mine, but before the politics, you don't get out. Then you realize that it's a messy business.
You mentioned the valley, and I've talked about this. I have some little piece of property out there. A friend and I bought, and getting a driveway permit was $200. It took 8 days to get approved, and then you get 150 back once it's inspected. Yeah. It was just like that, So for a lot of stuff out there, you don't even really have to. I think you have to tell them what you're doing. But here, I've had friends try to build houses, and there's permits and
well,
all
I have today. Today I had a
inspections.
client who was looking at a distressed property. And they're like, oh, I want to fix this up. And I said, you can't just fix it up. And they're like, what do you mean I can't just fix it up? And I go, you have to call, and you better call the Muni and get a code compliance study, which is $350. It's going to take you weeks to get to find out what they're going to require you to do. Because you can't get started without knowing what Muni building safety is going to require you to do on this property. They could just tear it apart. But these are some of the challenges these candidates are going to have to deal with, right? that's something that when Chris and I work together, those things are not party line issues. They're how do we make Anchorage a vibrant city?
You said
and I don't
something-
care what the letter is at the end of your name. We both freaking live here.
Yep.
How do we get housing and make it a great place to live?
You said something interesting before the show started. You said for the folks that, there's going to be at least 4 new members. I hope they know what they're doing with the budget, because you say you get elected and then you're voting on a budget a month later.
Oh,
right?
that was my oh crap moment. Like, I thought I had an idea, and then they stack these, and you have no idea. If you've never seen 3-ring binders this big in your life, and they just stack them in front of you, and like, hey, we're going to vote on this in 2 weeks. I hope you're prepared. And you're like, I spent so much time campaigning the last 4 or 5 months. Right. I didn't have time to also attend the 3 and 4 hour budgetary work sessions the Assembly's doing 2 or 3 times a week. And like, that's why I support what you were talking about with maybe moving. That's the only reason I would support moving the elections to.
Well, what I've said is, like, a lot of communities, Fairbanks, the Valley, Southeast, they'll do it in October,
right?
Early October, and not with the November election. But before we go to that, I want to just real quick. The polls close at 8, or you got to vote by 8, or get your ballot postmarked by 8, or
Right.
turned into the box.
And the drop box is all closed.
Yeah, I think it doesn't. Can you send it out a little later?
No.
It's 8 o'clock for the mail.
Yep.
The drop box is 8 o'clock too. Okay.
Yep.
So let's just real quick go through the races. If you guys want to pull up my screen, we're just we're doing this kind of a little bit low budget because it's an election, Anchorage election.
Kind of ease your race board.
And we're not doing all the graphics. By the way, if you're watching this and you like our stuff, alaskalandmine.com/donate or /subscribe. We love we got some sponsors, but I'm not going to lie, it didn't quite cover.
What sponsors might those be?
We have, oh my gosh, GCI, which
I don't know that GCI wants me putting their logo out there.
GCI, we love GCI. They have this lightning fast speed internet. And then, of course, lobbyists Ashley Reed, Ted Popley, and Frank Bickford. Let's pull up the screen here. We'll just go through these races real quick so we have an idea. We can just do a quick kind of, here we go. So we have the District 1, that's your district.
North Anchorage.
You're actually termed out next. You're done, right?
I am.
Next
yes.
year you can't
I have
run.
1 year left.
Unless you're like Trump, you can do one more. Maybe just try one more term.
I am not like Trump.
You can't be vice assembly.
Okay, so we have Daniel Vold.
I don't want to be.
We'll talk about these races more in depth later, but Daniel Vold, Nick Danger's a perennial candidate, didn't do much, but that's kind of a hot race I want to talk about a little bit. That's your race, that's your district, that's kind of, I call Daniel George's coalition MAGA plus NIMBY, which is very interesting. We'll talk about that one later. We have District 2, Eagle River. This is the Littlefield. He's not running for re-election, so it's David Gerker, who just ran against Kelly Merrick last year for the Senate race. He didn't win, but got his name out there. And you have Kyle Walker, who they were both on the a debate we did a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And then David Littleton was kind of stealth, but he did raise some money at the end. And he's kind of labor, and I think he's gotten support from Kelly Merrick and Joey Merrick. So that
In Eagle River, that might not serve him well. Kelly Merrick is a polarized individual. I mean, regardless of what you think, she just...
But in a three-way race, like
Yeah,
if he
it's
pulls
tough.
off 35, I don't know. I mean, you live there. Have you seen a lot? Is there stuff going on with that race?
Nah, it seems like most of the people I've been talking to, their minds made up. You know what I mean? They're pretty much,
I think that's the math, that it is going to be a status quo. There's not any surprises.
You think Gerker probably? Yeah. Then we have District 3, Cameron Perez Verdilla, who both opponents have not raised yet any money, reported any money. Maybe they're below the 5,000, but Cameron raised a lot of money, maybe the most out of anybody. So I'm sure he's fine. We have District 4. This is Meg Zalatel is not running for re-election, so Aaron Baldwin Day raising money, campaigning. Don Smith, former assembly member in the 70s, taking it back a few decades. He has not raised any money, or I live in that
No,
district.
he raised about $800.
But nothing like big.
No.
And then we have, actually, Yaro Silver's in studio. We're going to have her on the panel next. We have her and Angela Frank, who they both came on our debate a few weeks ago. And Angela Frank is a death doula, which I did not know what that is. Have you ever heard of that?
I have no idea.
It's a death guide, I guess.
Yeah,
You
so
guide
I actually
death
had one in my house for when my dog passed away,
Really?
and she was amazing.
Yeah, I think it's more for human. Maybe they do it for animals too. I
They
don't
do,
know.
yeah.
But it's a death guide.
Yeah.
I know she does that. I never
Yep.
knew what it was, and
I don't
we kind of
know.
had a little talk
My
about
dad's
it.
from Oklahoma. The death guide was like crushing a Miller Lite can and throwing it on the grave.
We didn't do that.
That was it, and that was get over
Yeah.
it. You got chores.
Maybe
to
if
do.
Angela Frank comes by, she can tell us about her. And then John Stiegel, did he raise any? I don't think he did anything. Yeah, nothing I've seen. And then District, then that's the Southeast Anchorage. That's the Karen Bronga not seeking re-election. And then District 6 is interesting because Randy Salt is there, but after reapportionment, he actually got moved into Cameron's district. So he's represented that district for a couple years, but hasn't
Almost 3 years.
lived in there.
Yeah.
Quite. The line's pretty close. So that's an open seat. And then Keith McCormick, And then Darren Colby, who I haven't really, he was supposed to come to our debate. He responded. We called him. Keith actually called him and said, "Where are you?" And he goes, "For what?" And he goes, "The debate." And he goes, "What debate?" And he goes, "Oh, that was today." So,
Okay, well, he's gonna run afoul with assembly meetings that seem to pop up and move
Somebody
around all
also,
the time.
funny story. Somebody told me they spotted him. They think it was him because there was a vehicle at like 1 a.m. with a large Darren Colby sticker driving like 10 miles under the speed limit.
There you go.
I got a report, so I don't know.
No,
Can't say anything.
no press
It
is
wasn't
bad
me.
press.
But I got the
guarantee it
report.
wasn't me.
That guy
was
merging
not
it.
Chris.
He's not the guy merging at 45 onto the highway, is he? 'Ause
Yes, I think it sounds like
I
that.
think he was. Look, if it's 1 a.m. and you're going 10 or 15 under the speed limit, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know, maybe he's half asleep.
My dad always told me when I was learning to drive, he always told me, slow drivers are more dangerous than fast drivers.
It depends on the conditions, but yes.
I
But
think
I'm the
he's
safest driver there is.
Some tickets? Or what do you-
Wait,
got-
something about pleading the
It-
When was your
I'm
last?
like-
When was your last ticket?
years ago. Knock on wood.
Mine was 09 on the coming over Toke.
Mine was last Thursday.
No shit.
Yeah, I ran the red light right in front of Lucky Wishbone. Because I was hauling ass, I was like and then it turned yellow, and it's like a 3-second yellow.
Yeah.
I was like, I can squeeze. And
Was
I
he
like,
waiting, or did he just
Oh
see
yeah,
you?
I was just sitting there, just waiting for me.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I wasn't. I didn't. I was
my-
like, oh yeah, I know what I did. Yeah,
The last one I had, I beat.
I owned it.
My last one was 09. I didn't even challenge it because I was driving a car to Canada for a buddy. And if you ever go to Toke, by the way, and you're going over that when you're leaving, slow down.
Yep.
That's a classic speed trap.
Oh, Glen
I
Allen.
was
Going
like,
into Glen
I was
Allen.
like 15 over. It was not
Going
great.
into Glen Allen's the same way. I got a ticket doing 46 and it was 49 and a 45.
Does that really?
Yeah, he said, well, you can contest it, but you're gonna have to drive up to Glen Allen, and you're gonna have to come up here to do it. So, or you can just pay the $60 fine.
It's not
2
worth.
points.
Did you go up?
That's no, I just paid the $60 fine and 2 points. I don't want to drive to
It's a
Glen
revenue
Allen for
program.
court.
And then we have school board. I haven't really covered. Maybe you can talk a little more. I mean, we have this Margot Bellamy. I've seen kind of activity on social media. This Alexander Rosales. This seems to be. He said some stuff, or maybe said some. I don't know what he said or didn't say. But
He did say some really brutal stuff.
so I've.
Parents of transgender kids should be castrated, I think was the most significant tweet that he put out there.
Okay, I've seen some.
Yeah.
There was some other World War II references.
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah.
But I don't know much. He's a military guy. I've seen him do some videos. But Margot Bellamy is a school board president, and then Kelly Lessons, Mark Anthony Cox. He's run several times. So I don't. The school board. They're interesting because the assembly is by district, but school board's citywide.
But it should be district. I think it.
And it's
I think it should too.
It's a
It
hard
should.
race. It's a citywide race. I don't know.
That's
how
like
they-
mayor. I mean, that's like mayor. You have to go. You have to. How do you even campaign?
And
You
they've
can't knock
raised
on
some
doors,
good
really.
money.
I think it
They
should be
raised
done
some
the
good
same
money.
as the assembly, and that way you could parallel them. You know what I mean? It would be much easier.
Now, let's talk about these board of supervisors. I'm just kidding. We're not going to talk about this.
Well, there is one thing to talk
really
about
complicated.
them. We are in discussions about moving the LRSA elections to another time in the year, maybe late summer.
so these are the limited road service areas.
Yeah, so what this does, we have like 150,
Oh, Bill Stoltz is on there.
150 ballot
Unopposed.
styles.
Former senator.
It's such a pain to have 150 ballots. If we were to split these out, then we would have probably 70 ballots and then way less kind of
that's-
confusion.
That's my friend Allison Ovanek's dad. Look at that. He's on there. I guess
Sold his business
unopposed.
and now he's running for office.
I think he's been on there. I think he's been on there for a while. Though.
I don't know.
Boot country. Anybody else you recognize?
Ted
Not really.
Trueblood.
Chris. What? Who's that?
I think he's the father of
So
the guy
many
who ran
names.
against
I
me
think I stood
last
next to that
time.
guy at Costco.
Oh, Alan Hippler. He works at the bank. Don't we have some?
They're
bond
not,
propositions,
yeah, they're
or-
not on this page. They're on a different
We'll have
page.
to pull- anyway, so we have 6 races. I'd say 2 of them are maybe worth the downtown and the Eagle River. The other ones, and if we want to maybe let's take a quick break. We're gonna get Yarrow up here. I'm gonna grab a little drink, some water. brought
By
to
the
you
way, 3 minutes to the
CCI.
ballots close.
3 minutes, and then we're
3
gonna have
minutes.
results. You said 8:39.
Yeah, it might come a little earlier tonight because they've been ahead of the curve.
Okay, we're
And
just,
if you need the fastest to get your information, I sure hope you have GCI Internet.
what a guy.
He's
He's
Sponsor.
working for this.
This is great. We're not even paying you, man. I love this.
Pizza.
Let's take a quick break. I want to
Paying
thank Chris
in
Constant, Assembly member Chris Constant, former Assembly member Kevin Cross. We'll be right back in a few minutes.
Well, it's an honor to be here at Centennial Hall, working for K2. I want to give a really great thanks to our star producer, Ms. Grace Elliott, over there by the door, putting the show together. And the whole staff of K2, Jamie Waste, Jeff Brown, Susan Fitzgerald, Katie Helt. Robert James playing the bass.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And Mr. Steve Nelson on the keys playing for you. My name's Justin Smith, and we got Doc Washington in the house, all the way here from Phoenix to sing for you. And stick around, folks, because we're playing all night. And here we go.
Okay, folks, we are back here with Chris Constant from the Anchorage Assembly, Kevin Cross, my co-host, and Yarrow Silvers, East Anchorage candidate. There's two opponents, but they haven't done a lot. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Yeah,
I'm going to call it for you right now. I'm going to predict you're going to...
Well, I don't want to jump ahead of us, but I think we ran a strong campaign. Yeah, and I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Now, it's 8 o'clock, 8:02, so the no more voting, right? The boxes are closed.
Yep.
Do they have, like, people at each box ready to go at 8?
Yep.
Is that, like,
they have at
coordinated?
least 2 people at every drop
Okay.
box across the city right now.
So it's also 8 p.m. to postmark it.
Yes.
So you got to be at the post office at the airport.
Yep. And so if you get a postmark that's late, they won't
I wonder if
count it.
anybody's doing that.
It's possible.
7:45
It's
or
possible. But
last
the
minute.
real hazard of voting at the post office is that they won't cancel it because for whatever reason, if they don't cancel that thing, then you don't have proof it was cast on election day.
Yeah.
It won't be counted.
Now, Yara, you've been quite vocal over the years at the Assembly, kind of testifying. Andrew Gray you're friends with Andrew Gray. He did that as well. He parlayed that into the legislature.
Right.
You've gone to the Assembly. Why did you? And thank you for coming on the debate with Angela Frank. If anyone needs a death doula, I'm calling her. I don't. She's the only one I know. But you and her came on. Mr. Stiegel, is that his? Do you know him? Have you met him? I haven't seen him.
I have met him once.
Okay.
Yes.
So you decided to run after Karen Bronga said she wasn't running. Is that right? Or were you going to challenge her?
I was not going to challenge her. We did discuss it beforehand. But yeah.
So I guess what's your top? You have a few reasons for. What's your top reason for deciding to run for?
Housing. I really want to work on housing.
Watch the NIMBYs.
So
Ask Kevin about that.
I've been told we can't call them NIMBYs anymore.
I call them that.
I know, but I've just been told we can't call them NIMBYs
Who
anymore.
said that?
I'm just telling you what I'm hearing.
It's like a pejorative. Or?
Yeah, instead it's
I can think of a lot worse words.
people who are concerned about the culture of their neighborhood, or what do they call it? The
Aesthetic.
yeah, there's a term that's like the classic
Yeah.
term.
I've heard this. What's this term? There's some term they apply like.
Character. Neighborhood. Character of their neighborhood.
I like my neighborhood
Right.
character. We're not going to change the character.
But we're not preserving the neighborhood character by not building housing. We're not.
Well-
We're not building the housing that's already there. We're not preserving the neighborhood character by doing that.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and a lot of it is just a complete and utter lack of understanding of what it takes to build housing. Because, this argument that large condo complexes are going to go on the hillside or something shows that they have no idea how COSAs or DEC requirements for well and septic, and that it's just impossible to do what they're fearing. And I understand it. Like, I wouldn't want something unattractive and scary in my backyard either. That's not going to happen if you really understood the components of what it takes to build a property and the complications and to go into construction. You're not going to build a big condo complex on the hillside on well and septic. It's just, if you had any idea what has to go in for the state and federal requirements, you would go, nobody in the right mind can afford it.
So I do want to speak to the defense of some of these folks a little bit, and just say that there was a time and a place in Anchorage, in particular the late 80s, the early 90s, when there were developers who were real scoundrels, who were building shabby developments, and they were using subpar materials that have all fallen apart. There's one guy in particular, it's the Pete Zamorello story. And when I first moved to Alaska in 1997, everyone was talking about site condos and how you couldn't drive an ambulance or a fire truck up and out through a neighborhood. And so that fear is what I think drove a lot of good faith people to get involved in what is our comprehensive plan and what is our city going to look like in 20 to 30 years. And so I give some credit to them for doing that work, but at the same time, we have to look forward and ask ourselves, well, it wasn't all great. It was great, some of it. Now, how do we fix the things that weren't great? And how do we go from here? And so that's the challenge.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of I understand.
Zamorello was the kind of the Greek builder, strip malls.
When we had the earthquake, Tisha Circle blew up, right? Remember that in 2018? Tisha Circle was one that he put sand in instead of gravel. And so even 30 years later.
Well, after the earthquake in 2018, and we see where all those around Raspberry and
Right,
Minnesota
Tisha
and
Circle.
stuff, and all that's Tisha Circle.
Yeah. We ended up putting it on a bond, a special project to rebuild something that,
Some of
anyhow.
those poor homeowners.
Right, and so
Well,
there's a reality.
one of the things I hear, and it's been talked about at the Assembly, is after a threeplex, it gets really hard.
It does.
Like single, duplex, triplex.
Then
That's
it's a commercial property.
and then it's like four. But those are, everybody's not going to buy a house.
But a lot of that, you're right in that there's only so much you can do locally, because a lot of that has to do with IBC and IRC.
I mean, why can't we just build a bunch of
Which is-
condos on the west end of the park strip? I mean, nobody ever goes down there anyways.
You just want people with raging torches to come in here and
There
lynch you.
are a
saying
couple.
there's like
Wait, there's a couple of
awesome.
beautiful properties
Throw a
for sale
couple
right
20
at the end of the park.
Throw a
Nobody
couple
plays
20
tennis.
The west end.
Other end.
Other end. The west end.
Other end. The view.
Throw a
the
couple
view
20,
end.
30-story condos.
Well,
in
I'm
that
from
baby.
Eagle River. It's all
20,
west.
30s, 30s.
Yeah, why not?
I think
all
the
west.
Out the
animalistic
rose
and
garden.
Parking garage underneath. You get some
Yep.
It's
coffee
all
shop,
It's all
restaurant.
mud. You won't get 30 stories.
Once
but
I
I would
get
settle
past
for
4
5.
rich, I just get lost.
I'd settle for 5.
Let's do that. I mean, let's meet
There's
in the
some
middle. on this
beautiful
thing.
properties at the end of the park strip for sale right now. Really
There's
beautiful.
that one I just saw. It's an older.
red house.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a,
Millions
yeah.
of dollars.
That's all you need.
All you need is
Hey,
millions of dollars.
we should pull that up. Did you see the inside of it? It's like frozen in time in the 80s.
It's amazing.
It needs
Wait,
a lot.
Hold on,
wait,
Talking
no.
about the kind of Frank Lloyd Wright type.
Right,
Of
no,
thing.
that's a different one.
Powder blue tubs are coming back in. I'm just going to throw
Well,
that
this
out
thing
there.
looks like I think there's a conversation thing.
No, and that
yeah.
one is a really interesting story, that house. But yes, and there's a sub-basement room that's all pink. It is straight up 80s something palace.
Something's going down. Something's going down in that place.
I can smell the potpourri.
Exactly.
Yar, I got to ask you now, kind of going. Are you ready from going from kind of like activist to like assembly? I mean, it's a different role, right? That's a
It
different
is,
kind
yeah.
of
Yeah, it's
situation.
definitely a different role. But yeah, I'm ready.
Who's the other? George Martinez, right? So assume you know him because there's two from each
Yeah.
district.
Yep.
We have. I'm very excited. We're going to go off script a little bit. We're going to bring in Kevin McCabe, Representative Kevin McCabe from Juneau. I want to just talk about a decision the Legislative Council made yesterday regarding security cameras magnetometers and metal detectors to enter the Capitol now.
Okay.
That's a decision
Interesting.
I don't like that at all. And Kevin actually wrote a little press release about it yesterday.
What do you got
So-
planned over there? What do we got?
the homeless people are
curious.
coming in and they're causing problems, which I mean, they're still going to come in. Maybe they're going to not have weapons. But they have. Kevin McCabe, how you doing, Kevin McCabe, Representative Kevin McCabe?
All right, Jeff.
Pretty good. Not really Anchorage or Big Lake. He's my neighbor. My friend and I bought some property. He's lived down the road from me, so he's my neighbor in Big Lake. But Representative Kevin McCabe from Big Lake yesterday, Ledge Council, which you were on before, you're not on now. They passed kind of a new policy about metal detectors and screening for. Sounds like everybody except legislators, state employees, law enforcement, and legislators' families. Is that right?
Sure, anybody with a key fob, essentially. So they, we've discussed it for 4 years, Jeff. Or at least the 4 years I've been down there. I was the vice chair of Ledge Council last year, and we had much discussion about it. And security's doing their job. They're rightly concerned about the security in the Capitol. So it's been under discussion for a while. But I will tell you that last summer when I was campaigning, I talked to constituents on the campaign trail, if you will, if there is such a thing in Big Lake, and clearly heard that that's the people's house, and they don't necessarily want it locked down, even as small as metal detectors. And frankly, there's really no room for them. You've been in that foyer; it's very hard to.
Well, I mean, what I'm kind of you've been to the Capitol, both of you. Have you been there? Yeah. Have you been there?
yeah.
So what I'm concerned about is if there's a group of kids or protesters or whatever group, and there's 20, 30 deep, and I don't know how long it's going to take, a minute each, if it's going to be a 20, 30 minute wait to get into the Capitol. I don't want to do that. I mean, I do have a fob because I get the press pass, I get the press desk, but even then, I mean, I don't know. This could, I think, have. Do you guys know about this? Do you guys hear about this policy?
No,
was
but it makes
adopted
me
yesterday?
wonder if that's a concern. You don't do like what you said. You got a fob, so there's obviously some sort of pre-screening. So individuals that are regularly visiting the Capitol, such as, I don't know if you like a TSA pre-boarding pass.
I'll tell you what, if they give the lobbyists one, people are going to freak out.
Yeah. No. Well, that's what I was
Actually,
like,
lobbyists, I've heard this
think
back in the
about that.
80s and 90s, lobbyists used to have key fobs. But at some point, I think they were like, bad look. So
Yeah,
during
they had their own door.
COVID, I thought about putting like a body cam on and taking bids and saying whoever charged, because I had access at the media, they
Yeah.
closed the Capitol down I said, put a body cam on, I'll do like an auction, the highest bidder, I'll walk around and talk to whoever, you know what I'm saying?
well, there's too many shady
following me?
people in Juneau. Maybe they just need to move to Anchorage.
They've,
Yeah, I'd be up for that.
you think,
I'm sorry.
You think the NIMBYs in Anchorage are you'd be persona non grata in Juneau, but there's some probably truth to reaching the Capitol and flying to Juneau. You've been there; it's $1,000. I mean,
It's
probably
expensive.
$500, $600.
Everything's
now
expensive.
it's $300 or $400 each way.
The little
right? The tickets have
Pelmani
gone up.
place is twice as expensive as Anchorage.
And then the hotels and all that. So to go down there for 2 or 3 days, you're talking about $1,000 or more.
I just fly in and fly out.
Well, Kevin, you put this press release out yesterday. You were very you didn't hold back, mince your words on this. I mean, what do you see happening here? I mean, when are they going to? I don't even know when they're going to put these things in. It sounds like not right away.
I think it's going to, 2 weeks, like the 15th of April, it's going to start. So they already have the magnetometers. It's like I say, it's something that's been contemplated for a couple years. So it will they'll have the procedures up and running and the magnetometers in shortly. I'm just worried about there will as many people as come in there. Sometimes we have 2 or 3 classes of kids. Oftentimes,
Yeah.
I had the entire Healy hockey team down there a month ago, and I'm worried that the line will be out the door in the rain and the snow, and it just is an impediment to people visiting their house.
Well, it was an interesting vote. It was 9-4, but there was like a 2-hour executive session, and my I've heard that there was a lot of behind the scenes arm twisting because there is a concern. There is some shady people that go into the Capitol, but they're still going to go in. They're still going to go in. Maybe they got to wait in line.
There's shady people everywhere. I've been there during the legislative session. There's as many people going through there as like Christmas, like the day before Christmas at Diamond Center.
Well, there's some shady legislators too.
There's seas of people, and so, but government also needs to be accessible, right? So how do you balance that?
Well, I think we're going to, at least when this thing starts, we'll see. Well, Kevin, thanks for coming on. You're in June. I'm back tomorrow. It's starting to. Would you say it's starting to get a little weird down there on the finance committee and on the budget process and a lot of levers being pulled in different directions? It's very interesting how it's going to shake out.
Yeah, I've been sort of head down today. I had combined the Senate and House State Affairs Committee with Ada in front of us, so a lot of pre-study for that and a lot of questions. And as you might imagine, that lasted the full 2 hours. So today was a little bit of a busy day. I wasn't paying too much attention to finance, so. Interesting.
Well, Representative Kevin McCabe, Big Lake from Juneau. Glad you came on. I wanted to talk about the new policy, so thanks for coming on and talking to us for a few minutes.
All right, Jeff. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Representative McCabe from Big Lake. Had to talk about that because I'm not very happy about this new policy. I'm a little bit mad, actually.
I'm big on open government. I don't love it.
So there's a statute.
You guys don't have that. You walk into this. Anybody walks in the assembly. There's some crazy.
Yeah,
you
but
guys
here's
deal
the
with
thing.
them.
There's a statute that says in order for us to put any controls on that magnetometers or guns, we can do it. We just have to have a public hearing. And I don't think anybody wants to sit through that public hearing.
See,
Just inviting.
See, in Juneau, it's true, and I'm not a big. I've thought. The driftwood problem I had a couple years ago, and other problems of everything closed at 9 p.m. to get food. It's just hard to be there, but. That's the Capitol. I don't think they're going to move it. But I will say, Ledge Council meets. It's a group of legislators who kind of govern the legislature. They meet in this room. They go in executive session. It's at night. It's not a public hearing like you're talking about.
Right.
It's not at all that. You can go watch the hearing, and they go in executive session for 2 hours, and then they come out and they vote.
Right, and a public hearing in Anchorage means the public has the right to testify. It's not just we do our business in public. It is that we have to allow anyone who wants to come speak 3 minutes to talk before we move that item forward.
So what you talk about here, Jeff, is the single most challenging thing I think as a public official I ever dealt with. How do you legislate what is a character issue?
Like a Dustin Darden or like a Niall Williams, these guys
They
who show
have
up
rights, you don't have to agree, or even just homeless people, which is basically behavior and stuff where we still have to balance the liberties and rights with how do we get along as a society and where do you draw the line with those rules. And that is probably the most challenging thing as an assembly member because one person's offense is another person's sympathy.
Well, I think from my perspective, I agree with you, but you get people like Dustin Darden and others who are just, they're just serial
I found him
disruptors.
entertaining.
He is sometimes entertaining.
Taking it out of the
how much
individual,
time does he waste per
taking it out
year?
of the focus on an individual, the reality is in D.C., you can't even get in the room barely. You're so secured away from where the government's happening. In Juneau, when you are allowed into the chamber and the business is happening, you're essentially looking at their back. Here in Anchorage and most local governments across America, you are facing the public. You are eye to eye with the people who elected you, and we pay for the sins of the state and the federal government because everybody comes where they can find someone to appeal to their government.
Yeah, you've been to several meetings over the years. You've seen a lot of when it goes haywire. How are you feeling if you win? And I'm very confident about that. How are you feeling about being on the other side of that and having to kind of watch all that? And it has calmed down a bit since a couple years ago. Was kind of peak loose, I call it, with the mask mandate stuff.
I was in the room during a lot of that, so I'm okay with it. I'm comfortable with it. If that's what people want to do. I was in the room then, and I'll be in the room again, I guess.
Chris, we have it's 8:17. I'm looking at no results.
Not yet.
You're in touch with these folks. Do we have any idea? You said maybe 8:39.
Yeah, no, probably real close to 8:30, if not sooner. And I was told we'll get a text when the numbers are up.
So we talked about the downtown race a little bit. There's also this South Anchorage race where it's kind of like your race. Keith McCormick is going to win that thing. The other guy, Darren Colby, didn't campaign much. That's Randy's Salt seat. He got moved with redistricting. Now, Keith has actually written some articles for the Landmine over the years, focusing on several issues. One of them is homelessness, and
We won't hold that against him.
hope not. He's a what is it? Not nurse practitioner.
No,
Yeah,
he's a
public physician.
physician's assistant
Yeah.
with an endorsement for psychiatric work.
But he's focused on the homeless is something I focused on. We made these videos starting 5-6 years ago,
Longer.
and it's just something that's top of mind for so many people now with these fires,
Yeah.
which we've seen in this summer. I mean, how worried? I'm very worried about a dry summer, not a lot of snow. Remember 2019? It was really hot, and we
ugly.
had Wasilla.
But for
Kenai
fun, we're going to
Peninsula,
add a volcano.
and we have this volcano.
Yeah, for fun, we're going to add a volcano.
Which
We
is
will
that?
go there.
I mean, is that good for a fire if the ash lands on the? I don't know. Is that
I don't
bad?
have any idea.
All I can
Not a-
hope is we have a summer like we
scientist.
had last summer where it just rained nonstop for 45 days.
Well, that's
the
true. I mean,
redeeming.
we saw.
we got our summer during the winter when it was too cold to enjoy it.
That's right.
But we just hope that another rain comes through there and squashes because it's
I mean,
all
the perfect
just
storm for us
precipitation.
is a very dry summer combined with this dry, low snow winter and a hot summer.
Remember
And I-
April, May, our
2019.
showers are rain. So maybe we can redeem ourselves with just. But the problem is, then that complicates other things, right? Because if your soils are too dry, there's not enough snowpack and not enough moisture, and you get a bunch of rain, then you end up with erosion issues, right?
Is it April showers,
May.
May flower?
In Alaska, it's
April
different,
flowers.
but yeah.
It's just. I always
that
thought it was
wrong?
just
You got it
rain
right.
with small periods of sunshine. That's what I recall. But I mean,
Well, I mean, last summer the rain was in some ways good for the fire season, but then we have back in our condo, we have a snow storage area, and there was so much runoff that we've created.
but there were landslide
ruts of-
issues. Chris, right behind your house, you have that property.
We have numbers.
No way. At 819?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, they're on the ball.
Hold on,
Someone's drinking Red Bull.
Do you have numbers or do we have numbers? Because I'm on the
It's
website.
up.
April unofficial results. Okay, let's pull it up,
Obviously,
guys.
Chris has got them before you. He's using
Let's pull it up.
GCI Internet.
Wow. So this is 3,800 votes. So this is not. Is that all we're going to get tonight?
Yeah, but this is
we're gonna
actually, we got 5,800, so this is the trend line.
Wow. So Daniel. So this we
With a
thought
commanding lead.
Could be a
Daniel
close
Boland
race.
out
but-
front.
Wow, that's like 2-1 almost. Wow. Again, 3,800 votes. So that's 10%.
And when I
said we're
ran last time,
30%
it was
maybe.
5,800. No, we're up to 60%. So you'll have another 1,500 to 2,000 votes coming in that
Not
race.
60%. No, 60% turnout's too high.
No, what I'm saying is we had citywide, like relative to the last vote by mail elections, we are at 60% of the total ballots we can expect for the whole election already
Yarrow's
in.
like freaking out. We'll get to you, Yarrow. Don't worry, we'll get to you.
She's like, scroll down.
No,
damn it.
it's
So, yeah,
fine, but I
yeah.
actually have to go. I'm supposed to meet my family downtown.
Okay, well, Yarrow, thanks for
We'll
coming on the
text you.
show.
We'll let you know
Make
how
sure
it
to get
goes.
unmiked so you don't have like a hot mic on the way home. You're listening, but thank you for coming on. Let's just check your race real quick while we're here.
Okay.
Yarrow, yeah, look at that, 47. You got more than the other ones combined, with 14%. So
Feel good.
Yep.
if I was you, I'd feel pretty good about that.
Right
Go
on.
team.
Congratulations.
Okay, so Yarrow, thanks for coming on the show. Good having you on. We're gonna go ahead and call it for you right now.
Thanks.
I'm calling it.
It's a pleasure sharing this moment with you.
Okay, so we got. Look at that. That's. I thought that was going to be closer.
It's over.
Look at Dick Danger. He normally gets like 1 or 2%.
No,
I would have
No,
thought that
he's
name
actually-
alone
that's
would have
about
got
right.
him a lot more
He had
turnout.
more- he had
Just
300 last
Nicholas
time.
Danger.
Gurker's kind of way up there over. Look at that. 15%, 10%. So they have more ballots coming from the Eagle River district.
I'm
Cameron obviously didn't really have opponents.
Cleaned up.
Interesting.
Don Smith didn't really do anything.
Aaron
He got a
Baldwin
third of the
Day
vote.
almost broke 60.
Yeah, the 15.9%, and then we have. You just talked about Yarrow, and then obviously look at my boy Keith, 23.6%
Well,
coming in.
How much did he
80
fundraise?
I think he's
Let's
got
see
a
how much money
mandate.
he saved.
I think he's got a
Save the money.
mandate.
Those are
Donate
Vladimir
to the
Putin. Those are Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong Un numbers right there.
Donald Trump.
Keith's putting up those numbers. Okay, Margot Bellamy. I didn't think that's a surprise.
Yeah,
I
she
thought that
crushed him.
was. And then same thing over here. Kelly Lessons. These are the incumbents.
Can we go all the way to the bottom? Let's look at
Scrolling so fast, I'm getting dizzy.
way to the bottom.
Wait, are we going? These are Lursa's.
All
Let's check
the
out
way to the
He
bottom.
wants to know.
the
he wants to
bond
know who won
propositions.
the-
Yes.
Lursa,
Bond
Lursa.
proposition.
Here
We
we
didn't
go.
talk
Okay,
about
so-
that. We didn't talk about
Well,
bond
this is real
propositions.
close. So capital improvements for the school district. Look at
That
that.
one's too close to call.
Look at that. That's
Oh,
like a
man.
point and a half.
Woo.
That one's too close
Okay,
to call.
roads and
that's a
drainage
difference of-
bonds.
That one's a done
Difference of
deal.
1,000.
That one's probably
Anchorage
done.
Parks. Now, I'll be honest. I used to vote for all the parks and the trails, but I've stopped doing that because
still do.
the homelessness stuff. I just feel like we can't really enjoy them as much as we used to be able to. So
I
anyway,
just
that's
listen.
pretty good.
If
That one's too close to call, I think, but
The
it's
police one is
yeah.
that's interesting.
that's the only.
close,
I mean,
right?
from somebody moving here, our redeeming factor is our parks and trails. Period.
Yeah, area-wide public safety.
That
capital.
one's great.
You don't come here for the shopping.
Senior center. Yeah, that's going to pass. It looks like. Ooh, fire service. The fire people are top of mind on the fire.
Yes, they are.
Especially this
How
time of
did
year.
Girdwood do? Oh my God!
If
did
you
Girdwood-
voted against that, and then you're going to complain
This
about
is
it.
so awful.
Valley.
It's awful for Girdwood because.
Girdwood Valley. What's that about?
So this is BS
It's so
because it
awful.
doesn't
That's a no.
impact
That's a
Anchorage.
no.
But it should be a yes, and we don't pay for it. We just have to approve it. It's a dual
This
yes
is-
vote. They get screwed every time.
Amen. So
got
I
you.
agree, Chris. You and I agree wholeheartedly.
Look at that.
You know, in
We're
order
in
for those
agreement. We're in
Girdwood
agreement.
bonds to get on there, Girdwood has to be almost completely
Wait,
behind
get
it.
to the next one.
But they,
Right, we got.
Yes.
their budget and their property taxes that they pay for, and the rest of Anchorage doesn't. But we get to say what they want in their
Anchorage
community.
State Park. Okay.
What's 11?
Anchorage roads and drainage looks like a yes. Anchorage Metro
God.
Police Service Area.
That one failed.
Anchorage Metro Police Service Area Special Tax Levy.
That was to buy cars for the police department.
Are you sure? No. I think that's the next one. Wasn't
That's
that
a no.
No, that's the
Police
that's
service
the
area. There was a
levy.
remodel of Lake Otis.
That passed.
How about Chugiak Birchwood Eagle River Rural Road Service Area? That's a no.
Yeah.
That was an
Subversive-
adjustment to the mill rate so that they could get more money for the.
This is another
railroad
Vladimir
service.
Putin level, approving de-annexation of Lot 2 from the totem. What the hell is that about?
Yeah, it's a tiny little minimal
not really
consideration.
Approval, another one.
It passed overwhelmingly, which means they didn't understand it. And they felt bad after voting no on so many things. They're like, let's get a
So it
yes
looks like
on
a few of the bonds are questionable. Most of them are, looks like they passed. And then we'll go back again to the top. Only 10%, much less return for District 1 for some reason. but
It's actually right on point. That
Daniel Voland way up, 2-1 almost for against Daniel George. Wow, and then 8% from Nick Danger. And then we have Deck Gurker here, well ahead of Kyle Walker. And this Littleton guy, he kind of came in hot at the end, but didn't really. You called that one. You said
Yeah, that status
people
quo.
aren't going to.
This is a status quo election.
Listen, I'm not here to say what. America has very polarized. Either they love her or they hate her.
Yeah.
There is no lukewarm.
Cameron, he's
that's a risk.
fine. And then we knew Aaron. I mean, all the people we thought were going to win. I mean, I thought the downtown one could be closer, and maybe it tightens up a little bit, but it's not going to. I mean, Daniel's
It's
1,000 votes ahead.
It's done.
So that's
Yep.
wow. I feel like kind of like this is like a low energy. Like we're done. We're
Status
done.
quo.
Hold on. I watched your debate between, Dan and Dan for District 1.
The Dans, yeah.
The Dans, and although there was minor differences, I thought for the most part they were aligned on things. I think a lot of Daniel George was, his campaign being heavily promoted
Let's go back to the normal shot.
by a previous assembly person. Who am I thinking of?
John Middleton.
John Weddleton.
Yeah.
I got the email,
Middleton.
and I read it, and I was like, but I've worked with Dan. And the problem is, with Voland, who looks like he's going to win, I'm safe to say I really enjoyed working with him. The great thing about Dan Voland is the same with Anna Brawley, who's on the Assembly. You'd think that they're really politically found, but if you can come to them with a logical perspective on why what they think is illogical or error, they will change. They'll just go, you know what? Good point. I think this is, and they'll redirect, which,
Well, it was
which
really
is a
interesting
critical attribute to have.
Because you can like or not like Dan for his positions, but Dan's a nice guy, and the ADN did some. I would call it a hit piece. You
I
read
agree.
this? I mean, it was.
I gave Zach a hard time for that article.
Wrote this article, and it was about this race, and he basically quoted like Karen Bronga and John Weddleton
And all the Hillside
said
people.
Daniel Voland's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
He's like a toxic man. That's what they said. And then Diane Holmes, who's from South Anchorage, who's an NIMBY, also was like, I'm supporting Daniel George. And then they didn't get any of Daniel Voland's supporters.
It was a sad article.
And they didn't really go into it's not about, they don't like Daniel's personality. They don't like his position on housing.
The problem is, and this is the dirty truth of politics, and I hope everybody's listening, but a lot of the politicians, if they're new in it and they don't know what's going on, they hire some of these political consultants who steer you wrong because they're not from Anchorage. They are these, groups of individuals that probably come out. It's funny, but we specialize in campaigns. We'll help you run everything. We'll do your.
We'll
text
charge you
message,
20 grand or 10
and
grand.
we'll do whatever ridiculous fee. And actually, it's weird, but I don't know if you know this, but I mean, when I was running for mine, they provided and at the time there was a really nice, fantastic human being who lives out in Tiffany. I'm trying to remember her last name. And they're like, oh, we did a study on it. It was a hit. I was like, I don't want your garbage. What do you mean you're like, for $5,000 I can get
Like
some
an
sort of
Oppo
political
research file?
like that's
like a
and I
Steele
go, no.
dossier?
I said, no. I said, no, keep your, I go, in fact, I'm not only am I not paying you, I'm really offended that you even offer
Chris,
this up.
You live there? I mean, I've been back for this weekend. I've heard some kind of hot radio ads against Volan. Maybe this
Radio ads.
Yeah, today I heard. Yes, I heard. Yes, I heard. about it.
Outside consultants.
I was at the
puppets, marionette
getting-
strings and puppets.
I was
all
getting-
the money.
I was getting my haircut earlier. And look, I get a 0 on top, and then I do a beard trim. Okay, so I do have hair on the sides. Okay, so I was getting my hair cut a cut above over at the Midtown Mall, and I heard this basically like Daniel Volan doesn't share your values, and I was like, what? And then I heard it in the car on KENI. But then there were some mailers going back and forth on. So I mean, sometimes these races, I've run for office. They get hot, they get nasty.
Yep.
He's apparently there's a zoom on. Look, I have hair on the sides. I really do. If I grew my hair out, I'd have
I'm
like
sure
a mean,
below the collar it's
I'd have
lush.
like a mean skullet. I could do the skullet if I wanted to, like a Bill Walker. I could do that.
That's why you're so warm in that suit. I
It's
mean,
pretty hot, man.
regardless.
Because
It's
it's close, and he's
walking
got
chia
layer,
pet.
the chia layer.
You gotta see my chest. But put the seat on.
I've been thinking about it. I was going to run my fingers through it later.
Well, so I will get back to this race, and it
He
was
actually zoomed in my head. I can't believe they did that.
super fascinating race. Like I said, I drove my whole district this last week, Friday, and the status quo was clearly in effect all across the district, in Spenard, in Valley of the Moon, in even Fairview, all the way to Turpin, like status quo. Just there was no vibe shift in signage, in any of the people I was seeing. And so it was only in South
ultimately
Edition.
It's downtown.
South Edition.
And I've known Daniel George a long time, very involved in the community councils. I've known Daniel for 10 plus years. We're buddies, like Daniel. But it was just interesting how he had like he worked for Dunleavy. He was supporting Bronson. He's kind of a conservative guy, which is fine. But it's downtown. But then some of the NIMBYs that were supporting him, one lady, I forget her name. I think I said this earlier. She has like these love is love, nobody is illegal.
Right.
All the symbols of all the religious symbols in her yard. She's supporting George.
Right.
Well,
Right,
I mean,
and I
To me,
think
that's like crazy.
I think Daniel George was misled by a handful of voices that told him this was the time. I think had he waited until now to file for next year, he would probably have walked into that seat. But now he is, because he picked a fight with someone that a lot of people respected, the facts came out in a way that would probably not otherwise have come out.
and here's another thing that he could have, and I don't know if he did, but I think a lot of potential candidates should do, and I'm putting myself in that pool, is just because you're frustrated with it, you can go and run, but maybe before you go and run, you go and talk and just spend an hour or two with your assembly person, talk about what your concerns are, what are they doing to address it, because I will tell you that the frustrations, like my door was always open. Anybody who wanted to, I returned every phone call. I was really surprised, at least for me, and I don't know if this is the same experience for Chris, was how many people were so angry that never bothered to call you and realize that you're receptive and that you're a great listener.
Right.
Part of what you have to be is a great listener.
Well, but there's a reality that was happening in this race. These folks, led by Mr. Middleton, are convincing people that Daniel Volan wasn't listening, because here's the reality.
He didn't agree.
That's it. And if you don't agree with my position, then you're not listening. No, he listened. He just couldn't. You have 48,500 constituents. You can't be everything to
especially
everybody.
if it's the loudest minority who shows up and screams and yells.
Well,
that happens a lot. In Juneau, it happens in Anchorage, it happens in politics.
And I think this race puts to bed an argument, and it's an argument that those folks who, led by Mr. Middleton, led by the folks up on Hillside, their voice
I've never heard
is
that Middleton.
over,
That's funny.
right? They have really seen their day. Now is a time when we work with them, understand their values, and move forward with good policy.
The danger of them kind of going all in like this, it empowers the people who have the opposite position now that there's a new assembly going to take over.
And so it's interesting. And so, when going back to some of the stuff, I remember when we were doing a slight change to R2M land,
Right.
and R3 land, which didn't.
You want to maybe just give a quick.
So So this had to do with something.
I'm being told we got to do a quick break.
All right, let's
I
do
want to come
this.
back to the R2 M3. You guys can talk
5
about that.
I'll
lots in South
continue to
Edition.
enjoy this fine glass of water from my GCI
How fast
mug.
is your internet, by the way? I mean, I see your computer.
It's so fast. Like, I
saw
almost,
you were
I
like,
almost had a
"Oh, God."
seizure. There's so much
Coming at me.
information thrown at me.
Okay, we're with Chris Conson from the Anchorage Assembly, Kevin Cross from the formerly Anchorage Assembly. We just had Yarrow Silvers on. The results are in. We've gone over them. We're going to take a quick break, back in a few minutes, and we're going to keep talking about Anchorage issues and some of the results. Thanks.
How's everybody doing? All right. Well, it's an honor to be here at Centennial Hall, working for K2. I want to give a really great thanks to our star producer, Ms. Grace Elliott, over there by the door, putting the show together. And the whole staff of K2, Jamie Waste, Jeff Brown, Susan Fitzgerald, Katie Helt. And can I hear it one time for Fort James playing the bass? And how about for Alan Wicks on the drums? And Mr. Steve Nelson on the keys playing for you. My name's Justin Smith, and we got Doc Washington in the house, all the way here from Phoenix to sing for you. And stick around, folks, because we're playing all night. And here we go.
camera strength equipment.
Okay, folks, we are back here in studio. We've had the results come out. We've gone over them. We'll go over them again. We're going to talk about some of the candidates, some of the races, some of the issues facing Anchorage. I'm joined here live in studio by Chris Constant, Anchorage Assembly Chair, Kevin Cross, former Assembly member from Chugiaki River, and we have Cale Green in studio, friend of Landmine, my buddy for decade plus now. Been a while. Now, you were actually helping in the Daniel Voland race, right? You were doing some.
Yeah,
you do media, your video, your consult, and I think you were helping in the Keith McCormick one too, right? So
yeah, I
are you
helped
taking
him.
full credit for these wins?
No. I told both. I very begrudgingly ended up helping in any assembly races at all because I had just gotten back from a job up in Barrow for a while, and that was a really fun job, but I was like, I don't really want to touch politics. But Keith dragged me back in first because I've actually known Keith since, gosh, we were in first grade together.
Oh, I didn't know you guys went back.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, we Ocean View, Golden View South. We had the same pipeline all the way through.
That's like an OG. You gotta step up for him, right?
Yeah, and Keith's great, and our values align pretty well. And Keith is, pretty new to the Anchorage, municipal scene, and so there's a lot that I think he's got to be able to bring. He's young, he's a new voice, and I'm really excited to see what he does for South Anchorage. So I don't take credit. Keith did a lot of work. He was an incredible campaigner throughout this whole thing, and you can see by the numbers.
You're friends with Daniel Voland, but you're also friends with Daniel George too, right?
I'm friends with both of them.
Wasn't that kind of didn't they both maybe want to have you help out? Or
I'm very much ideologically I may be in some ways more aligned with Daniel George, right? Daniel Voland though has done really incredible things for his district. I mean, personally, I live in Valley of the Moon, and I was really impressed because there was a camp across the street from my home, and I had been talking to people for 4 years trying to get something done because there were 40 people living across the street from me.
I was at that camp. I think you and I went there once.
And
I wasn't living there like you.
I wasn't living there.
Just kidding.
I stayed in the Sullivan Arena one night, man.
That's right.
Daniel, with as much respect for human rights and humanity and everything you could do, he still brought over the homelessness coordinator from the city. He brought like 8 people over. We walked around the neighborhood. They listened to the concerns, and they ended up abating the camp. Which I was like, I don't care what anyone. That's huge. It's nice when you can see a representative of your district do something for you that actually has a tangible impact, and that's why these local elections matter so much because these are the people. You can see all the stuff that's happening with Trump. Frankly, not a lot of that has impacted.
I mean, Kevin and Chris, what do you guys? I've said this before. I mean, these elections impact you. I mean, there was just a talk of a sales tax. I mean, people can be against that or not. There's school stuff. There's homelessness. I mean, there's all these issues that can definitely be affected by one person or a few people on the assembly. But most people I talk to don't even know their assembly person, let alone their legislator. They know who the president is. They might know who their congressperson is. But it's kind of a disconnect there on who your local representatives are, assembly people, city council, when, they have the most impact on your life.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's, I think one, it's I honestly don't recall learning about this in high school, and I'm born and raised here. I remember a lot of things, but I don't remember learning a lot about local government. I think you have to be intentional with what you want to know.
Chugiak High.
They do.
Every year
They're very
sends
active.
multiple classes. So does, what's it called up by Hillside?
South?
No,
Service.
Service High. They send regularly government classes to our meetings. And so I know they're getting a good education on how it works locally. But it is a missing piece.
No.
Yeah, it is a missing
Well, when
piece.
I was a kid, if you were involved with student government, you were a loser, right? And we used to I used to pick on that guy, and now you realize he's the one making the decisions that affect you the most.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I remember I took AP government and stuff, but it was always national, electoral college, House, Senate, President, the bill, the 3 branches of government. You kind of a little bit on the state stuff, but you're right. I mean, you really never got into the. My dad was engaged, so I knew there was a mayor. I knew there was a city where I grew up. I knew these things existed, but I really never got exposed to them.
I went out to the Beartooth for dinner on Friday, I think, and I was sitting there joking with my friend who I was having dinner with about how I'm sorry, but we're in my office. And so at least 6 times during dinner, people I'd never met before came up.
We're in my office, I'm having dinner, these are my constituents.
No.
Welcome to my office.
I was just hanging out, but it's like anywhere you go is your office. You do this work long enough, people do know who you are. And so I had randomly 6 people I had never met before come up and introduce themselves to me. And so People do know.
Positive, negative?
This time, positive.
I also think that I think that people conflate the federal government and what happens in D.C. with local government, and they don't realize how much power you have at a local level if you're active. You know, particularly at your community council level. Look at how powerful some of these community councils are that only have 9 or 10 people show up. And
I was president of Taco Campbell Community Council for years, and we had for a long time 5, 6, 7, 8 people show up until the marijuana stuff passed. And we had King Street in our community council area.
Yeah.
We had one meeting. There was like 100 people because they realized, oh my gosh, this has an impact on. Also, remember the train at Al's?
Oh, yes.
Years ago, they put the big train car at Al's Sports Bar.
Yes.
People freaked out. I thought it was great. Apparently, he didn't get a permit. He had to take it down, but they came to the community council. But look at Holton Hills, right? These group of people kind of methodically went to the community councils, misled them about the Holton Hills development in Girdwood, got these resolutions signed off. It went to the assembly. The assembly says, oh, I guess the community councils are, you know, and when a small group of folks can sometimes really impact how the
Well, and that was not
decisions
just
get made.
Holton Hills. What you discover that happens a lot is that they don't have to win an issue. All they have to do is confuse it with enough misinformation that they can stall it.
Let's go back one more time to my screen, Trent. We got Trent and Casey and David back there. We got a great team. Also, our sponsors. I want to thank, of course, GCI for the lightning fast internet, and then lobbyists Ashley Reed, Ted Popley, and Frank Bickford. I think you've met Ashley Reed, right, Kale?
Yeah.
That guy's been around a long time.
Ashley's wonderful.
That's a guy who has a lot of knowledge. You know, if I'm hiring a lobbyist, I'm going to probably call Frank or Ashley or Ted tonight because they're sponsoring the show. But if it was maybe tomorrow, it could be, you know.
So it's funny you should mention this. So back in 2014, I was president of the Anchorage Board of Realtors, and that was probably my first real in-depth.
They come to Juneau.
Yeah, they do. We did. We came to it with housing issues and stuff that was in legislation, and here's what blew me away, and this is kind of where eventually I ended up on the Assembly, is we went there with all these issues about, did you not realize this is in your legislation and how devastating this was? And what I discovered is that at least in Juneau,
$1.5 billion, which is like, we can't afford that. I mean, that's not enough money to pay for that, really. But it's a big. There's a lot of levers, and you pull one, and you don't pull the other one, everything gets thrown off. And then there's also this capital budget. There's a lot of pressure to spend money on those. And there's a lot of spending pressure, but there's not a lot of revenues coming in.
It's interesting when it comes to these huge budget items. On the Assembly, when we were working on an amendment to the leash law, 38 people showed up.
Like a dog?
Dogs.
Okay.
When we passed the school budget,
$800 million.
2 people. 2 people showed up to give public testimony on the budget. That's half their property taxes. But 38 showed up at the previous meeting to discuss.
Why do you think? I
whether
mean, there's
you
so
could
many
put an
parents. You'd
electronic
think there'd
leash
be
on
more.
it. And it's just like, I mean, I understand.
Was it
Previous
night?
years,
Was it like a
previous
Tuesday
years.
night? Or?
No.
It's
It's just interesting that the really big complex issues get the least amount of participation, which puts onerous on the individuals making policy.
Well, you see that in Juneau sometimes on certain issues, on very kind of weird, the Turo tax bill, which is this rental car tax and Turo, and people kind of, because people have Turo and they line up. You're right, you see that, but in the budget, a lot of people testify in the budget, but because of certain things. But you're right, these kind of weird issues that nobody you would think would care about. People do show up for some of those.
That's how they get on the agenda. It's because somebody cares about it.
Yep.
We're going to take a quick break. Kale, thanks for coming on. So, again, you feel pretty good about Mr.
Quit
Nolan
hogging the
there?
conversation, Cal.
Yeah. What I would say, just going back, I don't know if you did a breakdown of one. But just given that's the only real contentious or billed as contentious race that there was, I do want to say Daniel Volin performed excellently in that race. He is a much better ideological alignment with that district than Daniel George was. And frankly, he did a lot of constituent work, and Daniel George never defined himself as being different than Daniel Volin. He never had a contrast that was clear for voters, so I don't know the appeal that they were trying to make, and he never defined what issues he
even
was
on the
going
debate we
for.
did a few weeks ago, I mean, they seemed not that different.
And that's
I agree.
on most of the things.
And I watched it, and I agree.
and that's not how you
Did you watch
differentiate yourself.
Did you watch the
And in which
GCI
case,
was one of the
if I
sponsors
can't
of
tell
the
the
debates?
difference of you, why would I take a risk on something?
Totally. The
Did you see the
incumbent has
GCI
advantage.
sponsored those debates? Did you see that?
Yeah.
So before we take a break, I want to say one thing and speak to the audience. I'm catching a little bit of heat just for being here because
Really?
in this world, people like to have.
You gotta see my
You're a
Twitter,
horrible
man.
human
I know.
being, Chris.
I don't tweet anymore. I
We're
killed
gonna
my
blanket
Twitter.
party.
Yeah, you love Twitter. You were kind of fun on Twitter, man.
Yeah, I got rid
Did you
of
go to
it.
the blue thing?
Yes, but
God.
but really, I just want to say that if we and this will set up the next section maybe, if we continue only to stay in our silos and have the conversations only in the places where people agree with us all of the time, then there's no purpose
point.
in doing
Bill
anything.
Maher, who I love,
forget it.
is meeting with Trump this week, who I also love. So that's, I mean, Bill Maher like hates. For years, he's been the biggest anti-Trump voice. He's going to meet with Trump. I think that's a great thing.
I think I agree with Bill Maher, but I don't know that I would take that meeting. But my point here is just that
If Trump called you and said, "I wanted to meet with you,"
Probably not.
you'd say no.
Yeah, probably
You'd
not.
think about it.
Yeah, no,
you'd
probably
think
not.
about it, maybe.
But the point I'm trying to make here is that we have to have opportunities to dialogue with people we disagree with. And sometimes there are tensions over specific issues, and you have to figure that out over time.
You're getting texts right now about being here.
On social
You got to be
media.
curious. You just got to. The most important human attribute you will ever have to the success of your life and your children, your family is curiosity, right? And that is what am I missing? What do I need to learn? Because if you just shut yourself down to understanding and you've already preconceived your notion and determined that what I have is right regardless of what you tell me, then you're more. You don't even realize that you may be causing unintentional
You
suffering.
should go. I'm going to give a little plug for Landmine Book Club. I mean, we read all nonfiction. We read
love
a variety
Scratch
of
and
books.
Sniff.
No. We one of the books we read White Fragility.
Do you want to pull little tabs? Little guys jump out.
we read White Fragility. I mean, we read all kinds of books. Oh yeah, Landmine Book Club, all nonfiction. It's great.
man.
It's a great. You guys should join it. Go online, asklandmine.com.
Now I have a
/Landmine
reason
Book
to
Club.
finish my Hooked on Phonics.
When you're on the assembly, your reading is very prescriptive.
It
You
is.
talked about
it's painful.
the binders of.
Oh my God.
Binders. Like
I've lost my
Mitt Romney,
ability to
binders
see.
of women.
Oh my
Remember,
God.
remember that?
No.
Yes.
He talked about the women. He had the binders of the for picking women for position. Speaking of that, we have Alexis Johnson in studio. We're going to be having her on next. I'm very excited to have her here. And
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and Mike Braniff, are you coming on? Not coming on. He's here and he's in the audience. I love that.
You have been
Director.
identified.
So we will be
that who that
back
is out
in
there?
one second. I want to thank Cale Green for
thought
coming
I
on the show.
smelled-
Results
I
are
thought I
out.
Axe body
We
spray.
have one update today, unfortunately. Kevin Cross, Chris Constant, Jeff Landfield here. We'll be right back. I want to thank GCI lobbyist Ashley Reed, Frank Bickford, and Ted Popely. We'll be right back.
detectives.
Okay, folks, we are back here live in studio covering the 2025 Anchorage municipal election. A bit low energy. Results are out. We have one dump. Not a lot of surprises. We've gone over them. We'll go over them again in a bit. We have Chris Constant here, Anchorage Assembly Chair. Kevin Cross, former Anchorage Assembly member from Chugiak, Eagle River, and Alexis Johnson, former Chief of Staff for the mayor, former
Homeless coordinator.
homelessness coordinator. You've got a lot of titles.
Yeah.
You've done some things. Now you're working.
Pool groomer.
Exactly.
Now you're working kind of in the We were actually several months ago, happened to be in Vegas at the same time.
Yes.
And I was there with a friend. You were at Link. I came over. I got to say, when somebody's never been to the craps table and you take them to the craps table, it always happens. Remember, I rolled for like 30 minutes.
Yep.
You didn't understand what that meant. A 30-minute roll is a big roll.
Nope, I was just excited and everyone else was excited. So when the energy's high.
I just said,
yeah.
don't say 7. I said, do not say 7. Don't want to say 7.
Or
That's
11-teen.
No, 11's,
we did
11's okay.
good.
actually.
11-teen, he said. Be careful.
7, not great when you're rolling. Anyways, Alexis, now you're kind of working in the nonprofit world as Henning, right?
Yeah, Henning Inc.
And we've talked about that a little bit, but now that you're here, something I've covered a lot over the years. It's a problem. It's I think gotten worse in some ways. There was this Martin v. Boise decision that kind of governed things for a long time, Ninth Circuit, about shelter space and being able to abate, and then that went away a year ago. But I think years and years and years of kind of homelessness and public camping. I know you guys are working to fix this, but it's an issue of what do we do with the people who don't want help, who don't want shelter, who don't want treatment.
Yeah, I think, Anchorage is being hit right now with kind of a perfect storm in homelessness. We have a housing shortage, especially in the low income bracket. We also have a ton of green space compared to other cities. And so it's kind of a culmination of a lot of things. Behavioral health services are ramping up, but they're not where they need to be right now. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing that we can do is just continue to advocate for people to be inside and to gain access to those services. Sheltering is not the perfect answer for homelessness, but in order to get people off of our green spaces and our parks and trails, we have to have adequate bed space. And so we've been working with the Live France administration to stand up cold weather shelter as well as housing opportunities. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but it's not a great situation.
That was a great answer. You're good at this, huh? Look at that.
It's like she's been asked it before.
Great answer. So, Chris, there's been this kind of debate for a long time about, we had the Sullivan Arena during COVID, opposed to what's one big shelter, opposed to several shelters around town, which people get angry about.
Yep.
But, it seems like one big shelter that really impacted the folks around the Sullivan Arena, the houses and the businesses.
It's a disaster.
Many people, I think you're one of them. Are you kind of the smaller shelter?
I think that I probably was one of the original leaders of the argument that we need scattered site development of supportive services and housing. Originally, the conversation really started in Anchorage around the Carlick Manor property, the Red Nose Inn, the Red Roof Inn, and there was a scenario in which every service to be offered was to be offered in Fairview. The government was concentrating it all there. And there was no question that's where it belonged. Why? Because that's where the people are. Then that put the services there. Then there are people there, and services, people. It creates an unescapable vortex for people in a neighborhood that is deteriorated because no one will go there. And so there are proof to the model. There are studies that demonstrate proof to the model of either scattered site or large.
When they set up the Sullivan Arena, we did our first video in 2019, and we had spent a lot of time on kind of 3rd and Ingra and Carlick over there by Beans, and that's no secret. That was like the ground zero we were talking about. Mm-hmm. But when the Sullivan opened up and you went down there, it was like kind of empty. It was way
3rd Avenue.
3rd Avenue,
yeah.
Way less. But then the Sullivan closed, and now you go back, and it's kind of back. Maybe not quite where it was, but it's
right. It's a bit different because there are a lot of different opportunities that have been stood up that are permanently funded, but it continues to be a challenge, and every neighborhood has to be part of the solution. It's not fair for all parts of Anchorage to decide for one neighborhood, you are the place where this will happen forever, because we basically disinvest that entire area.
Well, I think we saw like Ronald Ave. I mean, that guy was kind of broken by it. Oh, I mean, he had the auction yard right down by the
it's not fair.
Beans and by the Brother Francis.
And so part of this really touches me, just when it deals with youth, because you got to realize that every adult on our street all had the same beginning, which is a shattered childhood. Almost all of them came from broken homes or parentless homes or houses of abuse, they developed a survival mechanism that they took out in the streets so we didn't have anywhere, and they developed a habit, and it's recidivism. That's why the recidive rate is astronomical. If we just think that it's just going to be housing and shelters, that is like saying how you fix your roof leak is with more buckets. You can't. If we don't intentionally invest in our youth and in the children that are experiencing trauma, with more families, resources that are able to take these people in, as a foster parent and as a father, I will tell you that the number of teenagers out there that have nowhere to turn because there's no houses to take them in is astronomical.
I mean, I don't disagree that housing is definitely an element to it, but it just seems to me, from my perspective, I agree. I mean, I think we should have probably more adequate mental health and treatment and drug and alcohol.
Government cannot solve the problem that people in houses and caring, loving families, it's their result, it's their job.
But if government just kind of says, well, if you don't want help, we can't do anything. We're going to let you be outside. We're going to let you live in the parks, live in the trails, create problems. I mean, it seems to me there should be a carrot and stick approach. And if you don't crack down on it and say, you can't be here, you can't be outside, it's against the law, it's against the rules, you're ruining the spaces for other people, you're dangerous, it's kind of scary people sometimes that are violent or angry or yelling.
But without the law, there's nowhere to send them to, then that doesn't work. Right, and so it doesn't matter what the law, the Constitution, the U.S. Supreme Court said. If there's not a place to send them, then you just are literally creating a scenario where you're running people in circles.
Some of them have told me they have places, but their friends are outside.
A lot of times they will deny services.
It's fun in the summertime.
And that's
drugs
where the argument,
party.
I think, becomes, because if the space is available, there needs to be a mechanism for accountability to say, like, we don't allow people to be so intoxicated out in our streets. We pick them up, we Title 47 them, and then they have to go to sleep off. It's a detainment, but it's not under law enforcement. And so at some point you have to say, hey, you're not well enough to be out here. We need to assist you just a little bit, a leg up, instead of continuing to deny services.
I think it's crueler to leave a mentally ill person outside.
I agree. But that's a state law issue.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a local law issue. When I first came to Alaska, I got a job at the Volunteers of America's residential treatment program up on Highland. And I spent years working in that field, went to the company I work at now, my first tour, and witnessed how the state has implemented its behavioral health policy. And it really started it started with the deinstitutionalization movement, and in Cordova there was a big hospital. But since I was here, they cut API in half. There was a promise when they did that. It was 150 beds at API. They said, we're going to cut 75 beds out, but we're going to implement community-based supports, because most of these people just need some support. They don't need to be in the most expensive, locked-up, jail-like medical facility in the state. Well, the state, in all of its wisdom, got the capital stack right. They cut those 75 beds out, but they didn't fund the community-based supports. And so we have had 25 years of disinvestment in the behavioral health system.
Well, this was a movement that started in the 70s, and a lot of people blame Reagan. The California legislature voted unanimously before he did that. This was a nationwide movement. This was not Ronald Reagan saying, we're going to end funding. This was a nationwide movement that said, we're not going to just force people to be institutionalized in mental institutions. Now, I think we've probably gone the other way.
And the answer is
on the pendulum.
The Title 47 laws to ensure they are both constitutional and compassionate, but also provide for the people who are indigent and cannot take care of themselves. There is a way, but the state is the one who has to lead. Anchorage cannot afford to be the state of Alaska when it comes to behavioral health care.
There was a meeting on the second floor of the Assembly, of the City Hall building, shortly before I got off the Assembly, and it had to deal with the Davis Park snow dump. And there was
which is a huge camp right now.
And it was smaller back then, and there was a group of individuals that were invited to talk about what we could do. And we sat in a room, and I remember Parks was there, and I can't remember all the different departments were there. And I showed up because Davis Park, even though most people don't know, that little edge is District 2. It's actually Eagle River. So I ended up in the room.
And the other part's federal land, right?
Yeah, which, by the way, Eagle River is completely neglecting that and leaves it on District 1, even though technically it is our responsibility. But I was in the room to kind of have it, and what you had is
talk to Jamie Allard about that.
You had a group of 6 or 8. Listen, I don't draw the lines, but you got to respect the people who live within your boundaries. So, and there was a group of 6 individuals that were homeless down there, and they sat down and said, "There's no way we'll move. I don't care if you offer us money. I don't care if you offer us
Yeah,
anything.
I've heard
We're
that.
going to live here. And they said, you will have to drag me out by force. And the reason we want to live here is because we can drink and do our drugs and no one's going to
I've
judge
heard
us.
that
And if
many,
I
many
move across
times.
the street, we don't like those people because we get in fights. And it's like, so what do? Sometimes you got to realize these individuals, as tragic as their situation is, are also holding everybody else ransom.
I mean, Alexis, how many, is it 300? I mean, how many really chronic kind of problem people are out there? I mean, I see what we've done
I will
our
tell
videos.
you-
We've seen the same people
Yeah.
over the years and years. I mean, we've seen many of the exact same people.
There's about 500 people that will not seek services, will not engage with outreach. You have a population of about 700 to 1,000 that will come in and out of shelter, and then you really have a core of about 200 to 300 people who are actively engaging in their own rescue. Aside from that, it's a tiered system, I would say, but for the most part, you probably have about 500 people who have no desire to exit.
I mean, Chris, were you there? I
under
think it
any
was.
capacity.
I think Ethan was mayor. Berkowitz. It was. There was this big standoff at Valley of the Moon. It was like 5 or 6 years. You remember that?
2019.
And I was there, and I filmed it. There was a line of cops, and it was almost like out of a fucking
Yeah,
movie.
we
I
were
mean, there was
there that night.
20 cops marching.
They were
Not
marching.
quite batons, but it was I was like, what the hell is we watching here? Because it was this big standoff, and they all went to the woods, and they said, because you can't be in the park, right? But if you're in the woods, and they sent a few people in there, and a few people, said, okay, we'll get help, but 70% of them were like, we're not leaving, we don't want. I mean, and they were offering help, they were offering shelter. And I'm not sure if the police thing was the way the line of cops marching toward.
And that's why Davis is so big right now, is because everywhere else has been abated, these smaller camps, and the only place that they know where they feel like they're protected, essentially protected by the law or by the city, is Davis Park. Everywhere else seems to be a priority except for
And we've seen a couple a month ago, really big fire. I mean, a plume.
Yeah.
And there's some other smaller ones with vehicles.
3 days ago, there was one by the library.
And we talked about this, low snowfall, and if it's a dry summer, and I mean, it just takes one of these things to.
Well, and there's another issue
burn
that I don't
the
think
city.
there's a really good plan on right now, and that's what happens with all of these unhoused people if the volcano blows up. And that's a scenario that I don't think I've heard a really good answer to, because that's a major healthcare crisis for people to be out there breathing that kind of material in. And so this is an ongoing process. It's challenging. There are places where we are exceeding expectations. There are places where we're struggling. It almost always comes down to a money issue. We don't have an unlimited resource available to us. And that's
just to play the other side of it. I mean, it seems like we've spent so much money.
Right.
And it's the more we spend, I almost feel like, I mean, Eagle River doesn't really. Is there homelessness in Eagle River?
They send them to Anchorage.
Well, hold on.
The Valley too, probably. I asked my friends.
The Valley definitely
my
sends
friends tell me
people
the Valley.
here.
They say, yeah, we don't want them. We send them to Anchorage.
They send them here.
That's what they.
So Eagle
All
River
parts of Alaska, actually.
has intentionally, we call it good or bad, but I will tell you, intentionally avoided public transportation and social services for that particular reason. And they're on record. You call it good or bad or whatever it is, but they've basically said that's why they don't have. There's not secondhand stores. There's not a lot of that stuff. There's no. That's why they didn't want marijuana dispensaries, and they made it a nightmare on the one spot. They had one lone spot that might work in all of Eagle River, and they.
Oh, I remember that meet. That was a hot.
Listen,
a couple years ago.
the aura.
Assembly
And so,
meeting.
but if you want, that's. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's been intentional.
Well, I mean, where I agree the state does have a role is people come here from all over the. I mean, there's the services. People come here from all over the state for whatever reason, whether voluntarily,
okay.
whether they're asked to leave.
I'm going to speak
we
to
see
this
this
now.
happening.
I have a ray of light in all of this conversation, and it is a slow and painful one, but I have very proudly worked closely with a very unexpected partner in this conversation, and that is Senator Dan Sullivan. And so we have identified the simple fact, and really Anchorage figured this out for the country, I think.
That is unexpected.
There's a guy down in San Diego, a congressman who has been leading on this question, but we never heard it. And it's the HUD funding formula that funds the continuums of care across the country to address homelessness. A city like Houston, Texas has, and the funding formula is based on your local population, not on your indigent or homeless population. And so they have roughly the same amount of individuals experiencing homelessness as we do, maybe a bit more, maybe a third more, depending how you count it, because their point-in-time count is done at a reasonable time. For them, it's done in the winter when people are safe outside, unlike here. But the reality is they receive $47 million this year and every year to deal with the homeless issue, and they also receive $47 million of rental vouchers annually, so almost $100 million annually that HUD funds that city to tackle its homeless problem, and they are held up as the benchmark. This is what you need to do. We're doing everything they do, but we do it with $4 million. They get $15 million per person, or $15,000 per person. We get $1,000.
Alexis, let's just say if we had like adequate housing, we had fully the amount of homes we need. How much of that do you think how much of the problem would be solved if we had rampant available housing for purchase or for rent or?
Yeah, I think when you break it down, it's those numbers, those 200 to 300 people that are actively ready to change their lives, who want to engage in case management, who are showing up to AANA. Those are the people that succeed in housing. Oftentimes people fall out of housing when we just place them behind a closed door and say peace out.
Because like it is true, if you decide you want to get going and get your life in order, and you have no money and no job, $5,000 to get into a place may as well be $5 million. I mean, it may as well. And so yes, I think we should help those who want help, but the people.
One thing we don't talk about though is community. Their friends are outside.
Yeah, no,
so
they tell us.
If you have a community or a family, I mean, these are families on the street. If you have a family that is outside altogether, you can't move 12 of your friends into your one-bedroom studio apartment.
And then
so
sometimes they have animals.
So there's a group,
dogs, and
there's
that's
a group of people out there. They call them the $1 million men or the $1 million
babies.
the $1 million ones. And basically, as a landlord, you got to look out for them. They're individuals that rent one bedrooms or whatever it is, and one person on the lease, they're receiving some kind of assistance. And next thing you know, there's 8 people living in the unit, and they've destroyed it, and they've driven off. So that's been kind of the apprehension. And so it's that's why there's so many private property owners.
And you do rentals.
What's that?
You do rentals, right? You buy properties and do rentals.
I've been doing it for a long time.
Okay, I want to finish this back off where I started. Senator Sullivan, Lisa Murkowski are working really hard with HUD. We're hopefully going to be meeting with the new HUD secretary. We had the last one up here because the only answer for Anchorage to ultimately solve this problem is to have enough funding to do it. Even though, yes, we've spent a lot of money, it is an expensive problem. And if we could be funded equitably with what other cities of our equal problem are having, rather than cities with millions of people getting money for their population, not for their homeless, then
So
we would solve it.
Why aren't we getting, why are other cities
It's the
getting?
formula. It's based on how many people live in your county, not based on how many people are unhoused in your county. It's a disaster.
We have more.
So it's based on our
per capita, or-
270,000 people.
Yes, and so we get $4 million because we're a city of 270,000. They get, because they're a city of millions, they get a massive amount of money,
Yeah, so
but they
the
have
per
the
capita,
same
yeah, I
amount
see.
of homeless people. And so until that is resolved in some way, whether it's a cost of living allowance for Hawaii and Alaska, whether it's some other form of funding, we will never get ahead of this problem wholly. And that's why I'm grateful for our delegation in D.C. for working with us closely on this. There is no air gap. And in fact, the legislature, a majority signed on a letter of support with us. So we have the local government, the state government, and
Well, and last
the
year
federal.
they did approve $4 million for
Yeah.
the shelter
Cold
over there
weather shelter.
on 50.
So
I want to see a
that's the
Chris
ray of
Constant,
light.
Dan Sullivan selfie.
A senator. Yeah, I have one.
Senator Sullivan.
I got one.
I want to put that on the big screen over there.
I got one for you here. I got one for you. So no, and I mean, it's surprising because we are very different and we have different values, but there is no air gap between us on this question.
Well, I mean, this is an issue that transcends. I mean, I hear about it because we've been doing work on this for so many years. It's not really partisan anymore. People are pissed, and it goes from the left to the right
Rightfully
to the
so.
middle. It's not like a partisan. People aren't really on opposite sides of it. It's not like,
Well, and I think
taxes
people
or,
who have young kids, they
dividend.
want to let their kids go outside. It's not a safe place to be. People who love their parks and trails, that's not a safe place to be. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of riffraff going on outside. And so
I mean,
I think
the
housing
needle-
and
the-
finances are great, but there also needs to be a little bit of accountability for
You've
the
been
people
out there,
outside.
the trash, the stolen goods, the needles, the full-on like structures with generators and stovepipes and I mean, almost dwellings. And
Oh, they're structural.
one guy told me it's great. I don't pay property tax.
Yeah.
I don't pay rent. It's like awesome. I don't want to be around people. I'm very happy. He had actually had a two-story over in Davis Park. A two-story. Let me show that thing. Can we go to camera 1 here? Should I send this to the guys? Here, can you email me that? We'll put it on the big screen.
Email or
Text me that. I'll send it to the guys.
And I don't know, maybe it's just my old Southern Baptist roots coming through, but also there's not enough money in the world to pay other people to be compassionate and solve the problem. Like, if you're just going to hire a bureaucracy to solve the problem, don't be surprised if it's not efficient or go well. We all have to take, whether you're in your church or whatever organization you have, take a vested interest And, oh, well, I don't know where I heard it somewhere, but ask not what your government can do for you, but ask what you can do for your government, and be a proactive part of the solution. Rather than sitting on your couch angrily pointing your finger at where did my property taxes go, help be part of the solution. If you haven't caught on yet, the homeless problem is way bigger than what we can handle and what your assembly or your elected officials can handle on their own.
Well, I
It
mean,
takes everybody.
you make a good point about the volcano, which could be a big problem. But my biggest worry is a fire. You know, a fire that starts at the wrong time with the wrong wind.
And we just saw
the
that
wrong
one
place.
over off Fish Creek Trail or behind
Yeah, it's Spinard. Yeah, that was a
in
big.
Spinard.
I saw pictures. I mean, that was actually not a small.
Yeah.
There was a tent there, and then they got there. And sometimes these fires, they can't get to it right away. The one in 2019 on Elmore, which was luckily it was surrounded by roads, and it was accessible to have the fire department.
That was
show
a
up,
big
but
one.
That was a big fire. I saw it I was at the Anchorage LIO. There was something going on,
Flames were 200 feet tall.
and I was like, "What the hell is that?" And then,
There was another one in like 2022, I think, or 2023, the Elmore and Dowling fire. That was started by homeless individuals on federal
2019
land.
was
the
the
same
You start
one.
handing
Okay.
out fire extinguishers to homeless camps. I don't know what you look like. What is the,
I mean,
what is the short-term
I've actually
answer?
heard people say, believe it or not, I've heard people say we should put dumpsters out, which I think is insane. But people suggest putting like big trash cans.
We do provide service.
But I mean,
Those
it's the
big
brush,
trash
the
dumpster
dead
things. I mean,
grass
have you-
and stuff
We
like
do.
that. But I mean,
It's a
I don't
sane
know if you
response.
do a fire extinguisher drive
Trash
to
has to
help
go
homeless
somewhere,
camps
It's
or
a
whatever
sane
it is, but-
response.
Well, I've been to a lot of those camps. There's a lot
I
of
think
trash all
I
over
think the
place.
ratepayers of solid waste service should pay for it, but that's another story.
Okay, we're gonna go to. I want to thank Alexis Johnson for coming on. We got Kevin Cross, Chris
lovely.
Constant. Let's
Thank
do
you for
one
hanging out with
more.
me.
Let's do one more kind of election view here on the results. It's not like the state election where we get updates and it's kind of fun. We just got one. We got one dumper today.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
kind of a quiet election year.
We talked about
Status
that before.
quo.
It's
Yeah.
been, yeah.
Status quo.
My
Let's pull this up. If
hypothesis
we could have
is
my
because the
everybody
national
Trent and
stuff was
Casey
so
and
loud and obnoxious. You got
again here we
The
go. Daniel
presidential
Voland,
election took everything out.
Daniel
Awesome.
George, Daniel Voland. He's on his way over here. We're gonna have him on.
Oh, nice.
Hopefully the next
Voland's
segment.
here?
Yeah, he's coming over. It's almost 2-1 there above Daniel George. Kyle Walker, Jared Gerker. That's going to be a Jared Gerker situation there with almost half the vote. So again, this is the Mark Littlefield race who took your seat after you
Yep.
resigned a year ago.
And Mark is such a gem.
Cameron-
So
I'm sad
great.
to see him go.
Cameron Perez Verdiaz, he dialed that baby in. Look at that. Well, it's easy to win when your opponents don't raise or spend money or campaign. Aaron Baldwin Day. This is the Meg Zolotel, the vice chair of the assembly. She's up there, 2-1 almost here against Don Smith, OG from the 70s, former legislator. Actually, Sarah Rasmussen's grandfather. You know that? Sarah Rasmussen's grandfather.
Didn't know.
Oh, I thought you were saying he's not. I was like, no, he is. No, he's not. No, he
No,
is.
didn't know it.
Yeah. That's former legislator Sarah Rasmussen. Then we have Yarrow Silvers. This is the Karen Bronga, who we should pull that up. Once cosplayed as a Handmaid's Tale person.
It was right after the presidential election.
Yeah, and she also compared Don Young to a dirty diaper at one point. That was kind of a weird one over the Don Young port.
Well,
And then
was that here?
look at that. We got
I
Was
will
that
work
here or
with
DC?
anyone
we got
to solve
Chris
the
Constant
homeless
and Mayor
issue.
Sullivan. Or Senator Sullivan. Did I say Mayor Sullivan earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same name.
Again, I just
Senator
wanna
Sullivan,
say
Chris Constant. That's a great
I
shot.
will work with anybody to solve the homeless problem in our town.
Let's get it done.
we need
I mean, that
compassionate
picture.
solutions.
They say a picture's worth 1,000 words.
That's in his vault.
That's in DC.
Yeah.
You'll have to work with it.
Oh, I think you're saying the photo is in his vault. I was like,
No, the
Now it's
senators, the senators have vaults
cherishes
under
this.
the Capitol.
Okay,
No, they have like a little vault.
it's called. There's a name for it. It's called the Hideaway. It's the
Yeah,
rooms, right?
yeah, it's a little vault down below.
Easy.
Could be.
So actually, you're not supposed to know where they are. And who was it? Somebody I know was down there, and then actually I was down there too at one point. And,
Is that right?
But they don't tell the reporters like which room's whose. And I got to so I told somebody I was in there. They were, you got in there? I said yeah. I said no, whatever. There's a big deal. And they were like, well, we don't know because they move them. It's like their private little space.
It's a status issue.
Yeah,
everything is done by status in DC.
So let's go back to this last one. Keith McCormick. This is the Randy Salt race where we got McCormick with Kim Jong Un, kind of
Like numbers.
Joseph Stalin numbers over there. Margot Bellamy, school board president, right? Is she still the president?
No. Annie Holloman's the president.
Okay,
now.
she was the president,
Yeah.
but she's an incumbent,
Yep.
winning there against Rosales, and then Mark Anthony Cox is losing. Kind of runs a lot. Look at those numbers, big. Look at that.
7,000.
Citywide, right?
Yeah.
For school board. So we're gonna take a quick break. I think we got Daniel Voland here in the audience. Oh, look at him. He's low key with that hat on. He's
North
kinda hiding
Anchorage.
back there.
North
We're gonna have
Anchorage.
Daniel Voland on. Right
that
after
a-
this, Chris, you have a
quick call,
quick,
yeah, I'll
quick
be back.
Make North
interview.
Anchorage great
Folks,
again hat?
we'll be right back. We got Chris Ponson here in studio.
I
Kevin
saw
Cross,
one from
Alexis
Chris
Johnson,
that
thanks for
says,
coming on.
"Make
Jeff
Anchorage
Landfield,
I know.
sponsors,
Make Anchorage
boring
DCI,
again. We did.
Lobbyist Ashley
For this
Reed,
election.
Ted Popley, and Frank Bickford. We'll be right back.
it's an honor to be here at Centennial Hall, working for K2. I want to give a really great thanks to our star producer, Ms. Grace Elliott, over there by the door, put the show together. And the whole staff of K2, Jamie Waste, Jeff Brown, Susan Fitzgerald, Katie Helt. And can I hear it one time for Fort James playing the bass? And how about for Alan Wicks on the drums? And Mr. Steve Nelson on the keys playing for you. My name's Justin Smith, and we got Doc Washington in the house, all the way here from Phoenix to sing for you. And stick around, folks, because we're playing all night. Here we go.
Okay, folks, we are back here in studio with Chris Constant from the Anchorage Assembly, Kevin Cross, former Anchorage Assembly member from Chugiak, Eagle River, and Daniel Voland, who I'm going to say winner of the District 1 race. Kind of a hot race, and it got a little contentious. We're going to talk about that. First of all, I do want to say that one of the people supporting Daniel, George, can we cue that up? Can we cue up image 1?
Oh, God.
That's Karen Bronga. That's a real picture, folks. I did not Photoshop that. That is her.
There's a horrible Santa.
After the Trump,
Bad
right?
Santa.
Is it after the Donald Trump one?
Definitely bad Santa.
I mean, cosplaying the handmaid. She endorsed George, and we can take the handmaid tail off. And we talked about the ADN, which I thought was kind of a hit piece earlier, where she was quoted as basically saying, Daniel Voland's a piece of shit. I didn't like that, you know? And not just her, Weddleton and that Holmes, Diane Holmes, and some other, and they didn't quote your supporters, did they?
No.
Which I thought was weird.
It was an interesting piece, and I've had the opportunity to talk about that with Zach and
Hughes,
yeah,
the author.
You know, yeah, I don't know. I will say about Assemblymember Bronga, I think that she is predictably unpredictable.
Well, I mean, we saw the outfit.
Yeah. For my part, I've enjoyed working with her. We've teamed up on some parks bond stuff and some bike focused stuff.
Hold on, wait. We can't hear Daniel? Hold on. We're just doing a quick, we're going to do it live, folks. We're going to do it live. This is what we do. We
After dark.
We got David here. Is he on camera? Thanks, David. We're just going to do a quick.
Should we do a mic check all the way around? Make sure you can hear
Everybody else is good.
Check.
How's that sound?
Can you hear me now?
Do we have Daniel?
Go ahead and
Talk.
speak, Daniel.
Hello. Check. 1, 2, 3.
There he is. Okay, let's go back to the article, Bronga, not very
Yeah, well, I was saying-
unpredictably
Yeah,
unpredictable.
I was saying, I think Assemblymember Bronga is predictably unpredictable. You never know what to expect. But I have enjoyed working with her for my part. We've teamed up on some park spawn stuff that benefited both of our districts.
It's just weird. She has said some kind of
stuff.
not nice things about you. I thought it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, if it was me, I'm a counterpuncher. I don't like that stuff. I get
Yeah.
really angry when people come at me.
My experience, for the most part, in my first term on the Assembly, is that it's a very collaborative team. And even with folks maybe from different sides of the aisle, I'm sitting right now between two of my favorite colleagues that I've had the opportunity to work with. And so in this next term, that's what I want to continue to do.
You and Kevin and Meg did the zoning deal, or tried to do the zoning ordinance a year ago.
Kevin and Meg came up with a really crazy idea.
Yeah.
They got a conversation started in the community. It was a tough conversation. I think we're seeing sort of a perfect storm in terms of housing affordability. We've called it a crisis. And also a generational divide in our community. And competing visions, I think, for the future. I will say I appreciate the mayor's 10,000 units in 10 years plan. I think it's very ambitious. For my part, I intend to help make that happen. I want to help her implement that. And I'm excited. I think we have an administration that can really drive that process.
Now, you won this seat in a special election. This is after they divided, because for many decades, Anchorage was a smaller one member, and I guess they were supposed to move it around. That one member was supposed to kind of rove around, and it never did, which is kind of weird.
It did a little once in Eagle River a long time ago, but it moved downtown and stayed.
So then they passed this deal where they changed the boundary a little bit, made it two-member, and there was a special election. I think it was June of 22, is that right?
Yep.
And it was a really low, like, people are fishing and hunting and camping, and it was a weird time to...
There's a map in the downtown plan that was passed by the Assembly a couple years ago that shows where the tax base in the municipality comes from. It's like a topographical map. A big chunk, majority of our tax base comes from downtown, from our district,
that's a big property
North
down there,
Anchorage.
right?
Yep. And so if there was ever an argument for strong representation, it's North Anchorage. We were underrepresented. Now we have equal representation. And so it's been a journey. It's been a lot of fun. It's been challenging this first term. I've had great mentorship, my colleague from North Anchorage and others. And I just want to keep the momentum going and solve problems for Anchorage.
Now, Chris, I want to ask you, we kind of know who's the slate here. You'll stay there. Cameron will stay there. 4 new people. You've been chair the last year and a half, I guess.
Year and change.
So when does the reorganization thing normally? It seems like it happens after the election.
Yeah,
not too long, right?
The code provides that we have a reorganization vote on the meeting of certification, so that'll be coming up.
Now, is this kind of like, so in Juneau, the way it works is they have elections and they, form majorities, and oftentimes somebody who wins by a lot has a lot more leverage than somebody who, like, is an incumbent who basically maybe barely wins, and they kind of get sidelined a little bit. Does that happen on this level? And you guys have to do it live in the open because of that open meetings. The legislature is exempt, so they can go behind closed doors and organize themselves and not be subject to the Open Meetings Act.
Actually, the one vote that we are allowed in secret is our vote to organize. And so
But it happens at the meeting, right? It happens.
But it's a secret ballot.
Right.
And we are not,
Yeah.
It's an arguable conversation, but we're not subject to those rules for the question of organization.
My experience was we typically dictate to the individual who understands Robert's rules and who can maintain decorum very well.
Order.
Regardless of political, who makes sure they call out when individuals are either inappropriate, regardless what side it is.
So if like 3 people are running or 2 people, you need 7, right?
Yes.
So you need 7 out of 12 to. So if you have 3 people running and nobody, you can do. I mean, normally I don't really pay that close attention. Is it usually the first or second ballot, or can it be many more ballots?
So we actually, it usually happens pretty quickly, but it can get drawn out. Yeah, it can get drawn out.
You can do successive rounds.
Yep, and it can go on and on.
So from my, having served on it, when Chris became the chair, it's hard to argue that you can find anybody on the Assembly who understands procedure or understands the rules of what a chair should organize more than Chris was at the time of who he had to vote for. Because I mean, although I would love to be a chair in order to, but I probably would be a bad fit because I was new. You know, there's certain procedural things that would make for a very awkward assembly meeting. So you were to throw me at the helm.
So Daniel, you came on, you were just one new person. When Kevin, you came on, there was, I forget, there was a few.
Five.
So now it's 4. That's a third of the assembly is new. So.
And then next year, Felix and I will be terming out. And so, like, my mission right now on through the end of my term, and it really for the last year has been mentorship, like building the leadership base so that it's prepared to carry forward. That's my biggest challenge right now. So, because this work is not easy. It is fun and interesting and painful too, but it's complicated until you get it. Once you get it, there's a dynamic. And, you know, if Meg had run again this time, I'm certain she would be the chair because she's prepared. She's been practicing. She's got all the moves. And so it's just do
Well, she's been vice chair, right?
Right.
So who's going to be the chair? Do we know? Do we have an idea? Or do we
TBD.
do we announcements? Or?
TBD.
Do you want to keep me in
I
chair?
want to know what you guys are thinking. Come on.
Yeah, do you want to
Spill
keep
the
me in
beans.
chair?
Come on, bean spillers.
Yeah, no.
That's
a conversation for another day. We'll come back and have that talk later.
Well, I will say one of the things I'm excited about is
Dan's announcing his campaign for chair right now.
no. I'm excited that some of the incoming members have been very involved, closely followed the process. They understand the Assembly's legislative.
Yara was
drafting.
here earlier.
Yara Silvers, Aaron Baldwin Day. They're going to really be ready, I think, to hit the ground running. But they're also going to have a lot of support from the incumbents, but also from our legislative services team. They get a lot of training. So I think we're going to have a really good team.
I want to do just one last conversation. I think we're going to wrap it up. We had again, not as exciting as the state, legislative. When we get the governor, Senate, we get those updates. It's a little more high energy. This is just the one and done. But we talked about this during the debates with everybody, and it's kind of been tabled, I guess, for now, the sales tax, 3%. And there is a bill in the legislature which would allow a residential exemption only. Right now, there's no exception with residential and commercial. But I just think, you could be against taxes, and some people are, but the amount of tourists we get and people we get coming into Anchorage who don't pay anything, it's kind of crazy to me. I think it should offset property tax a little bit, and the rest should go to snow plowing and to building things. And I don't know if you guys know, I'm a big Kinnick Bridge guy, also the highway to highway, and there's other
So I've heard.
things
Give
we
me a
can
knife.
build.
Give me a knife. I need a knife
We don't
right
build
now.
anything, and
Surprised you took this long to bring it up.
The North Anchorage
You're right, I should have had a
Assembly
sign.
members are going to hold the wall. They're going to hold the line.
that's you, it's you guys. You guys
Yeah.
be in my
The other
way.
side of
I'm going to bulldoze. I'm going to get a bulldozer.
Yeah.
So
They
you
can
start
do they can do a tunnel now. They can talk about a tunnel.
They're talking about it. They're talking.
really
They
just
have
need a
the
couple
dream
billion
big.
dollars.
Right.
Couple billion dollars.
Few bill. We've handed out $5 billion in dividends the last 5 years. That's a couple bridges.
Yeah, I think our focus,
true.
we'd rather see the neighborhood of Fairview reconnected and that highway system fixed.
Agreed.
But going to the sales tax,
So here's
this has
my
been
thoughts
hot
on the
kind
sales
of
tax.
for a year almost.
There was an argument made that this sales tax, as proposed, would have brought in money from outsiders, but the reality is it would have exported 3 times as much out of the state to massive property owners than it would have brought in.
But what if you could just do the residential?
I don't agree because most
ICER's math.
of your downtown and midtown properties are leased
I know.
on triple net leases, and the tenant pays it, and those are local businesses paying it.
The
You
tax,
can argue that the property owners.
I'm telling you,
will they
they
reduce
lease it out.
will they reduce the rent?
they will not. And so the money would export out of the state into accounts that are owned by people who don't live in Alaska. And that was the reality of that tax. And so when a proposal comes back that doesn't do more harm than good, then we can have a conversation. It just missed the mark.
It's a go back to the drawing board moment, I think.
Do you think it's going to come back up, or I know it's kind of
Revenue is an essential part of the conversation. When I say we need the U.S. Congress to support us with a formula that meets the needs, we need that. We need also to take care of ourselves, because ultimately the last 10 years have taught us, since 2015, maybe since 2008, no one's coming to save us. The messes we have are the messes that we have to deal with.
The state sure ain't.
No one's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. And so there are going to be revenue conversations in the near future. It's just we have to have one that isn't more harmful than good.
Yeah, I think one part of that conversation that's interesting is how are we going to invest in ourselves and be a place that is a draw to people? How do we get families to want to move to Anchorage and root themselves here? How can they build a life or start a business or get a new job? We are losing population, working age population, and that's a sign of a city
For a decade, more than a decade.
Yeah, that's a sign of a city in decline, and we have to turn that around. And bringing it back just for a moment to the election, I think it's really interesting. You know, one of the attacks against me by my opponent was that I'm not from here. I didn't grow up here. And for me, you know, that was really interesting to see. I feel like that is the wrong messaging to be putting out to people right now for Anchorage. The messaging should be, if you want to come here, we are happy to have you. You belong. You can be part of our community, part of our economy. You can give back to the community. You can get involved in public service. There are many ways for you to make a positive impact in our community. And so I would just say to those who are listening to your program tonight, Jeff, you know, and I think
thousands of them.
I think especially, yeah, all 5 of you, especially, you know, I think we hear that more, I will say, from the conservative side in these campaigns. Sort of that nativist approach. And for me, I think it's detrimental to growing Anchorage to keep pushing out that message.
No, I mean, you do see that. It's weird, Alaska, the born and raised. And, you know, I've had friends who were not born here for, that, you know, they wanted to be mom living in the rural Alaska. They went down to Seattle or somewhere else and just have the baby, and then they come back and they're like, I'm not born. Who gives a shit? But it does.
Be proud of
come
it.
up. I mean, if
you were raised here, be proud of it. That's a great thing. But you know, one of the attacks on me was I used to have a mobile phone number with a different area code. You know, and this stuff just gets really
famously
silly.
like Tim Sullivan, who's Mayor Sullivan's nephew. He was born in, I guess, Portland for some reason, but he always kind of jokes like, I'm not born in, you know. Because his whole family's a Sullivan, right? But it's kind of this like running joke, but it's just a very odd. You see this all the time in the campaigns. Statewide
Alaska
campaigns,
is the only place in the country I've ever been where people tell you how long they lived in Alaska.
It's very provincial.
It's the only place I've ever been.
So Chris had brought up something at, I don't know if it was the last assembly meeting or where it was, but you know, I want to go back to this housing affordability issue. And you know, I'm not only a real estate licensee, but I also a mortgage lender. I don't think you guys realize how expensive it is to try to buy a house in Anchorage compared to anywhere else, and it's because of the property taxes. Now, I've come, like, granted, yes, I'm for a sales tax, but a big part of that, as opposed to like property tax, because I think property taxes are fundamentally unfair. But
we have
understand that it's
much higher than the national
thousands
average
of dollars more to buy the same price house in Anchorage than is in Wasilla, because we collect all our property taxes at one time of the year, and when somebody's buying a house, the lender requires that the prepaid taxes and insurance go into an escrow account. And it's thousands of dollars more in Anchorage for the same house in Wasilla, just because of the way we structure that.
How many mills are we? 20? I mean,
1.67 depends. That's what a lot of. That's where to 1.7.
I mean, I know that Anchorage is. It's more than the national average.
But regardless, so what Chris had mentioned was something that I would love to see, which is if you're not going to lower property taxes, maybe for first-time home buyers, you just lower it the first year. If you can waive property taxes just the first year when they buy the house, you can lower the entry level for getting into a house by thousands of dollars.
I think that's really interesting.
That's because
I have
listen,
a state law proposal right now.
It's more expensive to rent than it is to buy a house, at least in the long run. You don't realize it, but it's more expensive because you're not getting the debt
Well, no, I
reduction.
mean, I have a little
interest
condo and it's not worth a ton, but I think I pay now it's gone up to almost $4,000 a year in property tax.
So many of my peers.
And I have an exemption too. You know, the owner exemption, which is 20.
Even though you live in Juneau.
In all of the conversations.
I go down to Juneau for.
In all of the
Should be 3
conversations
months,
that we've had on housing, we hear from time and time again from young people that they are despairing of the dream of homeownership, or that the path is to be able to afford a house that they have to have rental income as well. So young people are looking at duplexes, triplexes as a path to housing affordability.
Or if the parents sell and pass down some cash.
And so we've got to make strides. And I think having a first-time home buyer.
So I'm telling you, my friend Andrew Gray has a bill this year. He's got the language in there, and the Mortgage Lenders Association wrote me, and they're on board to help support it. And so I predict it will get through the legislature this year.
I have a son who's 27. He's got a great job, makes great money.
You have a kid when you're like 15?
If I didn't have a rental property where he could live at significantly discount rent, I don't know how he would be saving for his first property. I don't know how he's doing it. I looked at his numbers. I sit down like, son, you just need to budget. Oh my gosh, no, like you're broke. Right?
Is it the avocado toast? Or?
No, he's not there. Like he can't even afford to go out. Just stays home and plays video games and hopes that hopes his car doesn't freaking break down.
I've told the story many times. I moved here in 2004. It was expensive, but it was doable. It was I worked and went to school and I saved money. I had a job. I was working in IT sales and I was able to save money up, and I got a condo that I bought in 2012, and it was a HUD foreclosure, so it was kind of a good deal. But it was like 150, and really good deal. And I put down, but things like doubled, and it's just the insurance has gone up, everything's gone up. Dude, buying that house right now, I mean, my mortgage is like $900.
Well, the early 90s.
And now with the interest rates and everything, it's like more than double, plus the condo dues.
Well, in the early 90s, when I was born and raised here, but really when I entered in the job force in the late 80s, early 90s, as long as you were sober and had a driver's license, there was $90,000 a year oil slope jobs and energy sector jobs everywhere. Like, unless you were a complete incompetent boob with a criminal record, like there was a job for you, right? It was the greatest time, and I look forward to us getting back there again with energy development and actually lucrative jobs, because not everybody wants. I don't know how anybody is living off $36,000 to $40,000 a year.
We have a ton of work to do in this city and this nation. There's all kinds of problems, and I hope we're going to make it great again. I'm pretty happy about that. Pretty excited about that.
How about we just make it more better? Can you guys maybe we split the difference?
Well, I want to
make America more better.
Make America great again. Just kind of. I thought you had North Anchorage as.
I was just going to say make North Anchorage great again.
I'm just repping my district. North Anchorage is already great. Well, we're also working on making Anchorage boring again.
I want to thank
less drama.
I want to thank Chris Constant. Let's do one more quick for the folks who probably have already seen it. Let's go back to the screen here. Pull up the PDF. We'll just do one more quick run through on the results. Let's go to the top here. We got Daniel Voland, Daniel George there. Daniel Voland's up by 20 some points, 2-1 almost, 10% reporting, but we're going to call it for Daniel Voland.
It's over.
Jared Gerker, who ran against Kelly Merrick there last time in the Senate race, he's going to win that race in Eagle River.
Strong showing by Kyle.
Yeah, no, he interesting guy. He came out. I don't know if you watched the debate, but he was interesting. I like that guy. Yeah. Cameron Perez-Verdilla, he's approaching those Kim Jong-un kind of Paul Pot numbers. We got Aaron Day. This is the open Meg Zaltel seat. 2-1 almost against Don Smith, OG from the 70s.
She's also approaching those numbers.
Sarah Rasmussen's grandfather and former legislator. We got Yarrow Silvers over here. She's got more than her two opponents combined who didn't really. Angela Frank, she was in the debate. Death Doula, which if you need a guide, I was reading about these. It's actually a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. And then we got Keith McCormick, who's putting up Mao Zedong numbers over here. Did they even have elections? Did Mao have? I don't know if he even really had.
Kuomintang. I don't know.
Mao was just kind of in there. And then we got
In fact, it makes you suspicious of that 7% votes. Like, where did those come from? Like, is there such a domination?
It's always funny when you look at like the write-ins. Like 193 people said, like, "Fuck it, I'm not voting for anybody."
Unresolved also could be a signature, or not a signature. But
how many do we have in Daniel's race? We have only 40. Oh, yeah, much less. Yeah. There's more over here. Usually when somebody's unopposed, there's more of those.
South Anchorage shows more.
We got Margot Bellamy is going to get reelected to the school board, and then Mark Anthony Kelly Lessons is going to get reelected, and we talked about some of the bonds earlier. So, Chris Constant, I want to thank you, Anchorage Assembly Chair Daniel Voll. Congratulations on the reelection, the first reelection. Kevin Cross.
Congratulate me on my freedom.
He's free, man. He's off the leash. He can say whatever he wants.
That's right.
I want to see you being on the piano, your keyboard. You had some great songs. This guy's got pipes.
I'm gonna
sing.
Rocket Man.
He's got.
Write one about
remember
you.
Assembly Man? He
Rocket Man.
deleted it.
A lot of people don't know, but I have a karaoke lounge in my basement.
We've had an epic.
Have you invited me over?
Have you been to his
But
house?
Dan's got
No.
a great voice too.
We having a party?
Jesus, you need to go to his house.
I'll go.
I'm gonna stage dive.
Tell me when.
No, his house is
ready
like
to catch
no
me?
other house.
I'm ready to do it. I mean, I've seen pictures. It looks like a nice house.
I trust your upper body strength, okay? Just fine.
I'll get you. I want to thank Yarrow Silvers was here earlier. We had Alexis Johnson. Who else was here? We had Kevin McCabe from Juneau. Am I missing anybody? We had who? Kale Green. Oh, he's over there.
Kale, you kidding me?
And again, I want to thank the co-hosts, Chris Constant, Kevin Cross, Daniel Volan. Folks, thanks for watching. I'm heading back to Juneau tomorrow. We're way more than halfway through the legislative session, and it's getting weird. They haven't really passed a budget out of the House Finance Committee yet, and they're supposed to have done that, I think, like now, and they're still working on that. The Senate's working on their stuff. They're supposed to change budgets. There's a dividend issue. There's a education funding increase issue. There's a capital budget issue. There's a how do we pay for this issue. So stay tuned. Updates from the Alaska Landmine. And if you're really interested in what's going on in Juneau, you should all subscribe to the Alaska Political Report. We have two. The city gets it. I don't think Kevin Cross gets the Alaska Political Report. I'm going to talk to you offline about that. I'm going to give you.
Feel the peer pressure already.
Yeah.
Big.
Kale gets it.
You know,
Kale likes it, right? Yeah.
I probably
Great
just
service.
need to
Oh, right.
Improve my bandwidth with my GCI service.
Do we get that?
I'm gonna need that in order.
It's a
to
great.
do my
You
political
had the logos out too. Like
report.
this is
I
out.
got the memo.
Ace Ventura. Thanks again, Kevin, Chris, Daniel. Thanks for watching, folks, and we will see you next time. I want to thank our crew as well and our sponsors, lobbyist Ashley Reed, Ted Popley, Frank Bickford, and of course, GCI.
GCI. I didn't know. I'm sorry.
Thanks again. Thanks again, everybody. See you next time.